The wind smelled of brine and storm as it moved over the dark waters of Blackwater Bay, curling around the shattered remains of ships and forgotten war machines half buried in silt. Spring in Westeros was seldom gentle. Cold rain came first, bruising the sea to slate. Then, in moments, it broke into silver shards of sunlight that danced across the shallows, revealing, for an instant, the bones of the city beyond. King's Landing clung to the promontory as if ashamed of itself, its walls patched and scorched from wars that had promised peace yet delivered only quieter forms of ruin. The Red Keep still loomed over everything. Scarred, yes, but unbowed. Its crimson banner hanging limp in the thin dawn light. Ellen of Volantis, cloaked in sodden wool, watched the city recede from the deck of the galley Far Vagar. She stood alone at the bow, gloved hands wrapped around the iron rail, as salt spray slicked her dark hair to her cheeks. The taste of it reminded her, oddly, of tears. She had none left for this place. When the captain, a Tyroshi with the gaudy beard of his people, asked where she wished at least to be landed, she had said only, Dragonstone. Her accent marked her foreign, yet the boldness in her gaze warned him against questions. Coins the color of dusk had done the rest. Gold always spoke convincingly, even when the tongue was uncertain. She kept her gaze fixed eastward now, toward that ancient island fastness, though nothing of it was yet visible, only the faint, almost superstitious hush that fell on sailors at the name. Dragonstone, Dyke. For a century, fishermen whispered of strange shapes wheeling above its cinder-colored cliffs at dusk. Some swore they saw fire ripple beneath the clouds like threads of molten glass. Others heard wings beating against the night, vast enough to churn the air into storms. Ellen did not rebuke them, for she alone aboard knew those rumors to be true. She carried proof of it in the hushed drum of her own heart, and in the faint scar curling over her left shoulder. A mark shaped like a crescent of pale ivory, where talon had met flesh in that first wary encounter far from any human shore. Drogon. Even to think the name set her pulse racing with mingled terror and wonder. The great dragon had come upon her in the deserts south of Meereen. No, not come upon her. Chosen her. She could never fully unravel the moment. One instant, she was staggering beneath a sky so vast and merciless, it felt like judgment, lungs rasping with dust. The next, the horizon had blazed, and the earth had shaken with the weight of a shadow made flesh. Drogon's wings had spanned the dying sun, his roar cracking stone. She had expected to be incinerated, yet instead he had settled before her, immense and terrible, studying her as though puzzling some delicate question. His eyes, burning coals flecked with gold, looked through her, into her, past every lie and dream she had ever nursed. She had heard her mother's voice telling of old blood, of distant kinship to Valyria's lost dragonlords, of a lineage so thinned by exile, it lingered only as embers in a dying heart. Embers enough, it seemed. The scar was the price of first contact. A single talon laid against her shoulder, more warning than wound, yet it had bled for days and ached still in winter. After, Drogon had lowered his great head so she might rest a trembling hand against hot scales. A bond, impossible yet undeniable, had quickened like a spark leaping from flint to tinder, and Ellen had climbed astride. On desperate, sweltering currents of air they had flown west, skirting the Basilisk Isles, crossing the summer sea in 3 long days, soaring above storms that would have sundered any ship. Dragons needed neither flag nor chart. Drogon followed instincts etched in bone older than kingdoms. He seemed drawn, as if by a lodestone, toward the cradle of his ancient house. Though Daenerys Targaryen, his first rider, had died years before in the ruins of Meereen, pierced by the very spears she'd once melted. Story said Drogon had circled her pyre until dawn swallowed the embers, then vanished into cloud-shrouded east. No more dragons, the world declared with hollow relief. How wrong it had been. The Far Vagar's oars dipped in slow rhythm. Gulls wheeled overhead, screaming. Ellen's thoughts drifted to those final hours before she left Essos. Drogon had delivered her upon a blackened plateau speckled with half-molten marble. The bones of old Kiz, and there, beneath a sky pulsing with heat, he had left her. Not abandoned, she felt, but sent on some errand she scarcely understood. Days later, a caravan bound north had found her walking alone, clothing in rags, skin blistered, eyes bright with feverish purpose. The merchant prince who commanded it, covetous of her strange accent and the faint shimmer of her silver-flecked eyes, allowed her passage at a price. She had paid in secrets. Maps of skies only dragons could see, rumors of lost Valyrian steel hidden in the demon road's forgotten forts. When at last they reached Volantis, she slipped away into the stinking night streets and vanished among the tattooed slaves. She had waited there, listening, watching, speaking little, until the dream. Fire, wings, the moon bleeding red, always the same. Then Drogon had appeared again, coiling out of the clouds above the Blackwater, his roar echoing against the ruins of the dragon pit. Small folk shrieked that Balerion the Black Dread had returned. Gold cloaks fled their posts, bells rang, and highborn lords whispered new wars. In the chaos, Ellen knew at last where her path lay, and she chartered the first vessel daring enough to brave the bay. Now, as dawn unfurled like pale silk, Dragonstone broke the horizon, jagged as a monstrous jaw-biting seawater. Towers shaped as ribbed spines, gates like open maws, bridges of fused black glass. The fortress was half castle, half fossil, a fossil of fire. Smoke curled from vents that never cooled, though no hearth had burned there in 20 years. Ellen felt heat stir beneath her sternum, an echo of Drogon's furnace heart calling to its twin across the leagues. She exhaled, a plume of vapor. It would begin here. The galley made berth at a crumbling quay studded with obsidian shards. Few ships dared dock, and those that did seldom lingered. The captain accepted her remaining coins and offered perfunctory blessings to whatever gods haunted this isle. Ellen shouldered her rough-spun satchel. Contents: a blackened dragon-bone dagger, a scrap of red silk embroidered with three-headed dragons, one change of clothes, a wineskin half gone, and stepped onto land shaped by ancient fire. Cold seeped instantly through her boots. Yet beneath, she swore she felt faint warmth, as though magma still lapped against hidden chambers far below. She climbed the steep, winding causeway toward the gates. Wind howled through basalt arches, carrying distant seabird cries that sounded disturbingly like human wails. The castle loomed ever larger, windows dark as empty eyes. No banners fluttered, no torches burned, but she was not alone. Halfway up, a figure emerged from behind a broken gargoyle. A man, tall, lean, cloaked in faded crimson. Hair like tarnished silver fell to his shoulders. A short beard framed a wary mouth. His hand rested on the hilt of a longsword, whose pommel was a snarling dragon's head. Ellen halted. Her pulse stuttered. Her first thought was Targaryen, but there were none left, save rumors. Her second, sellsword daughter. The third, enemy. He regarded her in silence until Wind snatched his hood aside, revealing pale violet eyes. "You walk boldly," he said at last. Voice low, foreign. Most feel this island's welcome and turn briskly away. "I was summoned," Ellen replied, though the word felt ridiculous on her tongue. Summoned? By what? A dragon? A ghost? She drew herself up, meeting his gaze. "And you?" "Keeper," he answered. "Caretaker, until the rightful heir returns." His lips curved almost amusingly. "I have waited long, yet you are not what I expected." "Nor I you." She nodded toward the sword. "Valyrian." He lifted it slightly, and the metal drank the light. Truth. The single word carried weight of oaths and old sorrows. He studied her another quiet moment. "Your eyes, silver and shadow. Blood of old Valyria? Thinned." She touched the scar through her cloak. Remembered. A gust tore between them. Over it rose a sound, deep, resonant, both music and thunder. It came from the clouds gathering off the eastern sea, rolling toward Dragonstone with gathering haste. The man turned, a flicker of awe softening his features. Ellen's heart hammered. The sky split. There, streaking between ragged towers, Drogon descended, wings like vast, tattered sails black as midnight, veined with streaks of ember red. Each stroke churned the air into cyclones, sending loose stones skittering down the causeway. He roared, the sound shaking dust from ancient gutters, and alighted upon the courtyard's fractured flagstones. Smoke poured from his nostrils, his tail, ridged with obsidian spines, gouged trenches in the ground. Ellen pushed past the stunned caretaker. Heat struck her face as she entered the courtyard. Drogon's head swung toward her, eyes smoldering. She felt more than heard his greeting, a hum through the stone, through her bones. She answered in whisper, "I am here." Behind her, boots scuffed. "7, save us," the caretaker whispered. "You ride him?" "I will again." She stepped forward. Scales shimmered, wet with morning mist. Drogon lowered his massive head until one golden eye filled her vision, pupil narrowing to a slit. She raised her hand, palm outward, and pressed it to the hot plane of scales just beneath that eye. The world contracted to the rhythmic bellows of his breath, to the faint thunder of blood in his veins, to her own trembling resolve. Then she climbed, grasping ridges worn smooth by years and war. Her scars stung, as always in these moments, but pain sharpened her focus. She settled between two soaring spines at the base of his neck. Below, the caretaker took a step, half enthralled, half terrified. "If you are what you seem," he called, "then Westeros is about to wake from a very long nightmare, or dream." Ellen leaned forward. Drogon's muscles coiled. Wind shrieked through the courtyard as he launched upward, scattering loose masonry. The caretaker braced as dust and ash swirled around him, cloak snapping. Dragon and rider climbed into gray skies. Beneath, the towers of Dragonstone diminished. Yet their significance grew in Ellen's mind, a throne waiting to be claimed, a legacy waiting to be reborn. She looked west, where King's Landing nestled behind its walls like a crab in shell, where lords plotted and peasants prayed for peace. Beyond that, the snow-touched north. Beyond even that, the wall still manned by ghosts in black. The realm lay fractured, weary of crowns. A dragon might unify, or destroy it anew. Far below, waves hammered the cliffs in rhythmic fury. Drogon angled toward open sea, riding coastal winds south. Ellen did not question. Instinct guided him to what she needed before she knew she needed it. Hours passed. Gulls diminished, replaced by cormorants skimming wave crests. At last, volcanic plumes appeared on the horizon, venting smoke into stripped skies. The smoking sea. Graveyard of Valyria. But Drogon banked east instead, circles tightening until he descended upon a lonely basalt spire that jutted from the ocean like a spear. No maps named it. No sailors spoke its existence. Yet stone stairs, cracked and ancient, spiraled its height. Drogon settled upon a plateau barely wide enough for his weight. Ellen dismounted, knees buckling on landing. She straightened. An archway cut through the rock led into darkness. Warm air, dry and metallic, blew from it, carrying faint echoes of something vast moving beneath the island. Drogon nudged her gently toward the entrance. Ellen swallowed. What lies within? Memory, yet not hers, unfurled behind her eyes. Forges beating like hearts, fire rivers coursing through iron channels, artisans in masks of gold shaping steel that shone like captured dawn. Valyria, before doom. She exhaled shaky breath and stepped inside. Torches burst alight along walls as though awakened by presence alone. She descended, deeper, where heat grew oppressive. Flickering light revealed murals of dragons coiling among stars, their riders crowned in flame. Valyrian glyphs traced their eternal bond. At the corridor's end, iron doors stood, each a relief of twin dragons lunging at a shared sun. They groaned open without touch. A chamber vast as a cathedral spread before her, its ceiling lost in shadows. At its center rested a sword upon a marble plinth, not in scabbard, not chained. Simply waiting. The blade, narrow, rippled with smoky silver. Its crossguard formed wings of obsidian black metal. The pommel a ruby the size of a dove's egg, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Ellen approached with reverence. She knew its name as if whispered into her blood. Eris's Stormheart. One of the last true blades forged in the final years before the Doom. Legend said it was destined to return only when Dragon and Rider rose to restore the lost Empire's grace. She laughed, a broken, exhilarated sound. Destiny. She had run from slavers, bargained with thieves, begged water from strangers, yet destiny had been chasing her all along. Her fingers closed around the hilt. It fit as though shaped them. Cold at first, but warmth surged instantly, rushing up her arm, blooming across her chest. The ruby flared. Echoes of drumming wings flooded the chamber. Somewhere above, Drogon roared, answering the sword's silent call. Ellen lifted Eris's. Light bled along its edge, slender veins of fire coursing within the metal, like living flame. She knew, suddenly, what must be done. Not the grand design, perhaps, but the first brushstroke upon the canvas of conquest. She turned back toward daylight. When she emerged, Drogon lowered his head. She showed him the sword, and his pupils dilated to great black pools reflecting its glow. A tremor rippled through him, not fear but recognition. She mounted. Together they rose once more, leaving the basalt spire to its endless vigil. Clouds parted before them. Ellen felt the sword's hum harmonize with the beat of Drogon's wings, with the furious staccato of her heart. She thought of the caretaker upon Dragonstone, of lords in their keeps, of small folk in fields, of broken oaths and shattered crowns. Westeros had forgotten dragons. It would remember. They turned north, shadow trailing across the sea like an omen. In the far distance, the pale ribbon of the Blackwater snaked toward King's Landing, where smoke from countless chimneys drifted lazily. Ordinary life, unaware. Ellen gripped Drogon's spine as wind screamed past. She whispered to the storm, "I am Ellen Targaryen, Stormborn, blood of fire. I have come to wake the world." Beneath her, Drogon answered with flame. They soared on, steady and relentless, as the long day unfolded. The sun climbed, burned, and dipped toward the western rim of the world. Villages marked their passage with hushed prayers or frantic flights to cellars. Shepherds abandoned flocks to scatter across hills. Rumors outtraced them. Some claimed the last dragon had returned for vengeance. Others that a fallen star now rode the beasts back, eyes aflame with prophecy. Yet by nightfall, one truth crystallized across holdfasts and halls. Dragonstone lived again. At dusk, they alighted on a jagged bluff overlooking God's Eye Lake. Stars blinked awake in velvet sky. Frogs chorused among reeds below. Ellen slid from Drogon, exhaustion making her knees rubber. She built a small fire from driftwood washed ashore, though the dragon's presence alone kept chill at bay. She ate hard bread and dried figs, staring into the flames until shadows blurred. Drogon coiled nearby in a crescent, wings folded, tail tip twitching like a cat's. Heat radiated from him, warping the night air. When she lay back against warm stone, sword across her lap, she wondered if Daenerys had felt the same fierce solitude, the singular weight of being bound to more than oneself. A star fell eastward, trailing silver dust. She murmured a vow to follow where signs led, to build not merely empire but renewal. Somewhere, in the hush between crackle and sigh, sleep took her. She woke before dawn. Mist clung to the lake, a white veil. Drogon sniffed at the air, restless. Ellen rose, brushed dew from her cloak, and mounted without a word. They lifted into brisk twilight, chasing a horizon streaked rose and gold. By mid-morning they reached Harrenhal, its melted towers clawing the sky like charcoal fingers. They circled once, ravens scattered in panicked clouds, and armored men in the courtyard threw down spears, faces stark with fear. Ellen did not linger. Stone still glistened with Aegon's ancient fury. She felt no need to mimic it yet. Northward they flew, following the Green Forks ribbon. Between the Trident's banks, small fires burned where armies once clashed. Now nothing but bones beneath tall grass. At the Crossroads Inn, travelers bent knees as the dragon's shadow draped their humble walls. Word spread faster than even Drogon's wings. A rider in black and red patrols the riverlands. Her sword glows with the light of dawn. They camped that night on Maidenpool's cliffs. There, as embers winked, a lone horseman approached under flagged truce. Drogon growled low, but Ellen stilled him with touch. The rider dismounted, removing helm to reveal a woman in her middle years, hair cropped close, eyes shrewd. "I am Lady Brienne of Tarth," she said, voice deep. "Shield of the realm once, though realms shift as easily as sand and tide. My king is gone, my oaths in limbo. I come to know your purpose." Nahar. Ellen studied her weary armor, dented but cared for, and saw not threat, but steadfast loneliness. "I seek to mend what centuries broke," she replied. "To forge unity through flame, not fear. But first I need allies whose honor has not rusted." Brienne's gaze flicked to Drogon's dark mass, silhouette shimmering with furnace glow. "Fire burns," she murmured. "Yet it can warm, if watched wisely." She sank to one knee, gauntlet pressing dirt. "If your cause is just, I will stand." Ellen bid her rise. Thus the first sword joined her banner, though no banner yet existed. They spoke through the night, trading truths beside dragonflame. Of broken kings, of unquiet dead beyond the wall, of small folk crushed between lords' ambitions. By dawn, purpose bound them like fresh-forged links. Days passed. Brienne rode ahead to rally scattered knights disillusioned by stagnant courts. Ellen and Drogon patrolled skies, offering presents as promise. They never lingered long. A dragon rooted is a siege weapon. But a dragon in motion is a gospel. In River Run, Sir Edmure Tully received them with trembling courtesy, memories of Aegon's doom upon his stones. Yet desperation and vision can be twins. Droughts had parched his fields, bandits bled his coffers. When Ellen proposed grain caravans guarded by steel and scale, his eyes brightened. Another need touched earth. At Seaguard, Lord Mallister pled for protection of his trade ships. Ellen granted escort over narrow seas in exchange for seasoned archers. Throughout the Riverlands, villages began flying scraps of cloth dyed crimson, bearing hastily stitched dragons, clumsy yet earnest echo of a banner still to come. Not all greeted her with open arms. In Fairmarket, a pact of lesser lords attempted an ambush, believing a single lucky scorpion bolt could fell history. Drogon's fire turned their wooden siege towers to pyres before they loosed. Ellen spared surviving soldiers, sending them home with singed eyebrows and heavier thoughts. Weeks stretched into months. Spring ripened into lush summer. Fields the color of tarnished copper brightened to vibrant green under protected skies. Refugees from war's margins drifted towards centers of new order, murmuring that perhaps dragons could carve peace as cleanly as they once carved conquest. Yet beyond Riverlands, other powers stirred. In King's Landing, the Iron Throne now rested beneath Lord Meryn Thornfield, a steward of tenuous legitimacy, neither loved nor feared enough to command loyalty in crisis. Reports of a dragon rider gathering allies tightened his nerves like bowstring. Councils dragged deep into candlelit nights. Ravens flew north, south, east carrying pleas, bribes, threats. Each return message told the same quiet truth. Thrones crumble when faith erodes. In the Vale, Lady Sansa Stark held court behind impregnable mountains, memories of dragonfire centuries old whispering through her stones. She read every rumor with grim calm, weighing the North's hard-won autonomy against new tides. On an amber evening, she penned a letter sealed with direwolf sigil, a request, not command, for audience, should Ellen's flame prove temperate. The North's voice echoed faintly across great distances, but another voice, deeper, older, roused from beneath red mountains of Dorne. Prince Kyle Martell, inheritor of Sand and Sun, remembered his mother's stories of dragon alliances. He sent emissaries bearing spears of sunrise steel and words of conditional loyalty, freedom in exchange for respect. "The sands know no masters," the message read, "yet they honor those who honor them." Ellen met each overture with careful grace. No oaths forced, all forged. A dynasty built on trust, not terror, would outlast even dragons. And always Drogon circled above, sentinel and symbol, sometimes resting atop ancient castles, other times hunting whales off the stepstones, but never straying far from his rider's call. People began naming him the Black Phoenix, reborn from Daenerys' ashes to herald renewal. One moonless night, as crops rustled in warm breeze, Brienne burst into Ellen's command tent near Acorn Hall. "Scouts returned," she said, breathless yet composed. "Crown forces march, 10,000 foot. Banners of crimson stag on field of gold." Lord Thornfield sends his reply. Ellen rose, fastening cloak. Erisys leaned against a table strewn with maps and ink. She gripped its hilt. The gem glowed, casting bloody light. "How long? Till they reach us?" 3 days by road," Brienne answered. "Faster if they push." Ellen looked toward the dark silhouette of Drogon, roosting beyond campfires, wings half unfurled like a living fortress. She felt a flicker of sorrow for those marching, unaware they strode toward legend. Yet peace sometimes demands proof of flame. "Gather our banners," she said quietly. "Tomorrow we fly to meet them, not above, but before, so they may see there is choice." Morning came hot and bright. Ellen mounted Drogon at first light, sword strapped across her back. Brienne rode beneath on a dappled courser, flanked by knights of Tarth and archers of Seaguard. They advanced along dusty road until horizon shimmered with the approach of 10,000. Standards fluttered, crimson stag, crowned. Trumpets blared. The earth thundered with iron-shod boots. Ellen signaled halt. Drogon landed amid her ranks, stirring dust. She dismounted, walked forward alone. Crown forces slowed, confusion rippling. At their fore, a lord in gilded armor spurred ahead, Sir Janos Harlaw, rumored vicious. He reined in yards away, visor lifted. Sweat beaded his brow. "You command this beast," he spat, but fear laced bravado. "I partner with him," Ellen corrected. She drew Erisys. Its edge shimmered but did not burn. Gasps rose. "I seek no slaughter. Turn back. Pledge swords to a realm reborn under justice, not desperation. You will be welcomed." Harlaw laughed harshly. A girl and her pet dare challenge the crown's might? The gem in Erisys flared. Drogon's head lowered behind Ellen, fangs bared. Wind whipped across the plains. Silence stretched until even birds ceased. Ellen's voice, when it came, carried like storm. "I challenge not might but fear. Ask yourself which truly rules your king." Harlaw's sneer faltered. Eyes darted to ranks behind, wavering. Soldiers shifted, unease spreading. A single voice rose. Soft, trembling. "Mercy." Another. "Dragon's return is omen." A third. "We march to die." Murmurs surged, shredding cohesion. Harlaw spurred horse forward blindly, drawing sword. Drogon roared. The horse reared, nearly throwing him. He regained seat, face pale. Ellen raised Erisys high. Flame bloomed along its length, not scorching but luminous, bright as dawn. Gasps turned to awe. She spoke, calm. "I am of the blood that walked in flame unburnt, yet I come not to reign by fire alone. Choose freely. Lay down arms and stand among the living." Helms clattered to ground. Burst dozens, then hundreds, until the clangor rolled like thunder across fields. Banners dipped. Harlaw wheeled. Vision of victory turned to dust. He opened his mouth, perhaps to cry treachery, but an arrow loosed from somewhere within his own host found the gap in his gorget. He toppled soundlessly. Ellen lowered the sword. Drogon exhaled a plume of smoke, more sigh than threat. In that moment, a new army was born, not conquered, but convinced. Night found them encamped beneath weeping willows along the rush. Fires dotted the dark like fallen stars. Ellen walked among former enemies now sworn, speaking names, listening to tales of hunger and hope. She felt her purpose deepen. Rule would be service or nothing. On a low ridge overlooking camp, Brienne joined her. "You won without flame," she said, voice laced with respect. "Flame still burns," Ellen replied, "but it must kindle hearts before fields." They looked skyward. Drogon hung against the moon like a shard of midnight. His wings shifted, sending ripples through starlight. Ellen felt the bond pulse, wordless yet clear. Trials loom. In the north, winds whispered of ancient terrors stirring anew, ice that no fire might quell alone. But that was for another dawn. Tonight, Ellen allowed herself a single breath of triumph, tinged with humility. She had walked a path of ash and shadow to stand here. Ahead lay blood and glory, and choices to sculpt legacies. Yet the echo of a broken world might still be mended, thread by thread, scale by scale, heart by heart. She closed her eyes. The night air carried scent of wood smoke, trampled grass, distant sea. Somewhere in the dark, a soldier sang a lullaby of old Valyria, voice rough yet tender. Others joined, hesitant but growing. The melody drifted upward, entwining with wind, with wings. Beneath it, Ellen felt a steady pulse. Sword, dragon, destiny, beating in unison. Tomorrow, they would march. In a year, perhaps, they would stand before the Iron Throne itself. But now, for the span of a single fragile heartbeat, dragon and rider, song and silence, hope and history fused into one. And the world, balanced on the cusp of dawn, listened. Wah! Awatenjay. Night relinquished its fragile hold upon the riverlands by slow degrees, peeling back skeins of silvery mist to reveal low hills and fertile flats beaded with dew. Campfires guttered into ash. Pickets, bleary-eyed after the long vigil, straightened when the first crow cried. Steel rang faintly as it met scabbard. All along the encampment on the eastern bank of the Rush, men and women unfamiliar with one another, the day before now moved with tentative coordination. Soldiers recently sworn, riverfolk volunteers, Brian's veterans of Tarth, even a scattering of Dornish bowmen who had ridden north in secret night marches. They shared no single banner beyond scraps of crimson cloth, and the knowledge that they had chosen the path of the dragon. Such knowledge carried its own gravity. It lent purpose to an army still learning to call itself by name. Ellen rose before dawn, as always, roused by the quiet spark in her blood that pulsed whenever Drogon stirred. She found him outside the circle of tents, crouched in the shallows of the river, steam rising where his belly met the water. He watched trout flash in riffles, and occasionally snapped one up with languid pleasure, as though reminding himself he was hunter second only to the sky. The black-red planes of his scales caught the early light, shimmering like armored embers beneath a coat of soot. Ellen approached barefoot, her boots slung over one shoulder, savoring the chill mud between her toes. Drogon turned his great head, amber eye widening before it narrowed to a sliver of affectionate recognition. He huffed, and the breeze smelled of furnace and riverweed. She pressed her hand to the curve of his jaw. "We ride north today," she murmured. "Not for conquest, only words. But words can bleed, so keep your fire close." Drogon's throat vibrated with a purr the size of distant thunder. A thin plume of smoke coiled upward, lost in the damp morning air. Ellen rested her brow against his scales, then withdrew, wiping her palm on her breeches. By the time she laced her boots and returned to camp, pennons were being affixed to makeshift poles, kettles rattled, and armorers coaxed forges to life with cautious bellows. She smelled iron, sweat, and promise. Brienne was already at the command table, her cropped hair glistening with river water from an early wash. Maps, once crisp, now showed creases of fatigue and greasy fingerprints. She looked up with that frank blue gaze and offered a slice of brown bread. Ellen declined gently. Hunger sat uneasy when horizons pressed close. "Scouts report the south road is clear to Maidenpool," Brienne said, voice low to avoid waking those still collapsed on bedrolls. "Beyond that, we bear east until we reach the King's Road. Lord Tully has secured ferries at the Trident Crossing. If we keep pace, we reach Moat Cailin within 14 days. Ellen traced the route with a forefinger. "And the Crown?" "Their banners withdrew south after Harloth fell," Brienne replied. "Lord Thornfield recalls his hosts to the capital. Rumor says he courts the Iron Bank for coin and Pentoshi mercenaries for steel. Coin withers without hearts to wield it," Ellen murmured. "Still, Mercenaries killed as surely as starving fathers, and betrayal walked smoother paths than prophecy. She tapped Seaguard's mark on the parchment. Archers travel by river. Let Malister's ships shadow the coast, safer than marching through woodlands haunted by cutpurses. Done, Brienne said, rolling the map. Your presence at Moat Cailin. Are you certain Lady Stark intends peace? No one is certain, least of all Lady Stark, Ellen said softly, thinking of parchment sealed with direwolf wax. Sansa Stark had written in a hand, both elegant and guarded. The North remembers its oaths, yet fears the old fires. Attend us, that we may judge the temper of the flame. Those words were neither threat nor invitation, but something more brittle. A bridge extended over dark water. Bridges, Ellen knew, could bear armies, or break beneath them. Before the sun crowned the eastern ridge, they broke camp. Brienne took charge of march columns. Ellen mounted Drogon, bypassing saddle and reins entirely, trusting knees and balance to hold. She rose into pale sky, scouting the winding ribbon of soldiers, 4,000 strong, an uneven but willing spine. From that height, the rush looked like a length of tarnished silver wire threading emerald fields. Farther west, storm clouds bruised the horizon, promising a rain they could ill afford but could not refuse. They made only 5 leagues that first day, slowed by wagons laden with grain and quarrelsome mules. Each delay brought frustration, yet Ellen permitted them. The army must learn to breathe together. Haste tore more than it healed. At dusk they crossed back to the western bank where ancient barrows studded the plain. They lit no great fires. King's Landing lay distant, but eyes traveled on wings. But they sang quietly, warbles of the free cities mingling with the deep river songs of the Trident folk. Brienne told ghost stories to restless squires. Edmure Tully arrived under cover of night, bringing barrels of pickled trout and a letter sealed with blue wax. Brynden Blackfish Tully offered veterans stationed near the Twins in exchange for a promise to reclaim Riverrun, should civil war come again. Ellen accepted, but she instructed the messenger to add, "Tell the Blackfish peace is our first siege." 3 days north of Maidenpool, rain found them. Fat, warm drops that climbed rapidly into sheets dense enough to blind. Wagons bogged waist deep, mules brayed, men cursed. Drogon loathed wet wings, and brooded beneath an overhang, tail lashing irritably. Ellen walked the slogging line on foot, boots sucking in muck, offering dry words of steadiness. She knew perseverance mattered more than speed. An army that endured such misery together forged resilience no spear dared pierce. When, on the 4th dawn, the sky cracked open and sunlight poured over marshes, troops cheered so fiercely her throat tightened. Small victories seed great ones. At the ferry town of Salt Pans, they encountered the first embers of organized resistance. Along the docks, a dozen armed men in crimson tunics, the Crown's lesser lancers, blocked the gangplanks. Their sergeant, face pitted by smallpox and pride, declared the docks closed under royal charter. Ellen dismounted, cloak dripping sea mist, and addressed him in front of his men. "I hold no quarrel with dutiful hearts," she said, voice calm but carrying. "Yet the ferries will sail. Stand aside and serve realm, not fear." The sergeant sneered, but his eyes flicked to Drogon perched on a seawall, nostrils steaming. Behind him, fisherfolk whispered rumors. This dragon rider spared those who bent, burned only iron resolve. A baker stepped from the crowd, flour still ghosting her forearms, and placed a hand on the surgeon's arm. "I lost 2 sons at Storm's End," she whispered, sure enough that all heard. "For what, sir? Another dull king's vanity? Let the beast pass if peace it seeks." Other voices joined, low but insistent. The surgeon's shoulders sagged. He lowered his spear. Ellen touched his helm in salute. He flinched, then straightened, perhaps seeing in her eyes something neither blade nor bribe could purchase. The true north of purpose. The lancers stood down, ferries launched at dusk under a sky pink as wounded coral. Crossing the Trident's broad mouth took a full day. Drogon circled overhead, slicing arcs in the clouds, occasionally diving to snap at monstrous eels that surfaced in curiosity. Soldiers laughed in nervous wonder. At River Run, Ellen left a garrison of 100 under Lord Tully's command, exchanging those river veterans for fresh recruits, eager for northern adventure. She wrote a letter to Lady Stark, carried by a raven with bleached feathers. I come in fire but speak with water's voice. Hear me. Beyond the fields of the Vale of Arryn, the King's Road rose and fell like a spine through forests tinged with early autumn gold, though summer still held the south. Nights drifted cooler. Scouts reported columns of wild geese winging west, all omen of changing winds. In the evenings, Brienne sparred with recruits, her longsword knocking aside blades in playful scorn. When she finally allowed herself to be disarmed, cheers erupted. She smiled, shy and broad, as if rediscovering a child's joy. Ellen observed from a distance, leaning on Eris's like shepherd's staff. She thought of bonds, dragon to rider, soldier to commander, stranger to stranger, each thread weaving a fabric stronger than banners. For the first time since Essos, she felt less a fugitive miracle and more a steward entrusted with fragile treasure. But not all hearts warmed to rising flame. In the tangled forest south of Moat Cailin, Brienne's forward outriders vanished into mist. 3 returned at dawn, bleeding from shallow cuts, eyes wide with tales of pale riders wielding blades rhymed with frost. Skeptics scorned such reports, but Ellen listened. The North had always harbored stories older than iron. The caretaker on Dragonstone once warned her, "Fire does not frighten everything in the dark." She ordered campfires banked low and patrols doubled. Drogon prowled above trees, uneasy. On the 12th night since leaving River Run, they reached the neck where serpent-infested mires swallowed roads whole and willy wisps, lured the careless to watery graves. The ruin of Moat Cailin reared out of salt haze, basalt towers broken like rotten teeth. Battlements slumped from centuries of siege and swamp rot. Yet torches now glowed on those walls, and banners of dire wolf silver gray rippled in twilight wind. The North had come to meet them. Ellen advanced alone, leaving Brienne and scouts to array camps on a drier ridge. She walked the causeway's slick stones, cloak snapping. Sir Willis Manderley awaited atop the gatehouse, flanked by archers whose arrows tracked her every step. He was massive as folklore, his chin concealed behind a beard white as sea foam. Yet his expression held courteous caution rather than hostility. A wooden cage descended by crank, swaying over brackish water. Ellen stepped inside. It rattled upward. No words were exchanged beyond the soft groan of ropes. Ritual of wary respect. Within Moat Cailin's courtyard, she found Lady Sansa Stark. The Lady of Winter-Turned Vale had the carved tranquility of marble. Auburn hair fell over a mantle of gray wool trimmed in white fox. At her side stood Sir Robin Arryn, no longer a pale boy, but a slender man with hawk's eyes, and Maester Colwyn bearing the chain of Winterfell. Sansa dismissed her guards with a glance. The archers above lowered bows but kept strings taut. Ellen bowed shallowly. "My lady." Sansa regarded her, voice neither warm nor cold. "Dragonstone reborn walks my halls. When last a dragon crossed this threshold, my ancestor knelt under Aegon's gaze, with a sword at his throat. Or so songs proclaim. You place no sword upon my neck." "No. I carry heiresses at my side," Ellen replied, "and I lay it down when peace allows." She drew the sword slowly by the flat, presenting the hilt forward. The ruby pulsed once, then dimmed. A hush fell, broken only by reeds whispering beyond the walls. Sansa's eyes flicked to the blade, then back. "My people suffered generations under southern crowns. We kept north to keep ourselves. Why would we trade cold freedom for warm uncertainty?" "Mandy." Ellen let the question linger. She spoke finally. "Freedom without fellowship becomes vigilant solitude. The world changes, and darkness stirs that neither wall nor isolation will long deny. I come to bind, not rule, to shield, not shackle. Let the North remain proud, but not alone." Maester Colwyn stirred, parchment in hand. "Rumors speak of Sellswords camped in the Crown Lands, 30,000 strong," he said. "If they march, Riverlands fall. The Neck could be next." Sansa's gaze drifted past Ellen, northward, as though following the ragged edge of memory to a broken wall and a night of falling snow. "Winter once came with dead things," she murmured. "We burned them with dragon glass, not dragon's fire." She refocused. "Prove your flame serves more than ambition. Aid us in guarding the wall, and perhaps the direwolf and dragon may share one sky." "It shall be done," Ellen said. They clasped wrists. Sparks of recognition, two women weighed by legacy, flared then cooled into pragmatic accord. That night Sansa hosted a feast of simple northern fare. Venison stew thick with barley, crusty oat bread, cloudberries steeped in honeyed mead. Warriors from both hosts mingled awkwardly under gutted timber roofs hung with moss. Drogon sprawled beyond walls, satisfied with a whole aurochs delivered by trembling herdsmen. Ellen sat beside Sansa at the head of a long trestle table, discussing roads, harvest stores, and the murmur of restless things beyond the shivering sea. Brienne traded sparring tales with Sir Willis. The giant laughed like crashing surf. Robar Royce recounted how, in the Vale, knights trained falcons to carry wildfire bombs. Ellen made a mental note, but kept her face serene. When candles guttered low, Sansa rose. "Walk with me." They climbed a spiral stair to a balcony open to night wind. Stars burned fiercely. A crescent moon silvered the marsh. Drogon's silhouette cut a ragged V against the sky where he circled slowly, content guardian. Sansa leaned upon the crumbling parapet. "Growing seasons shorten," she said. "Ravens from the last hearth speak of frost in summer fields. And shapes, pale as moon milk, glimpsed among pines. The free folk whisper these are only scouts of a deeper cold." Dinner. Ellen recalled the pale riders sighted by her missing outriders. A shiver touched her spine. "Do you believe them?" "I've learned belief is choice, not luxury," Sansa replied. "One I dare not squander." She turned, solemn. "If doom rises beyond the wall, dragons alone may not prevail. We will need every forge, every shield, and unity that cannot be bought by fear." Her eyes, shadowed, found Ellen's. "Will you stand even when crowns fall meaningless?" Ellen pressed her palm to the pulsing ruby of Eresis. "I will stand while breath endures, and after, if flame remembers my name." Sansa studied her a long breath, then nodded. "So be it. In 3 days we ride to Winterfell. The north must see Drogon with its own eyes." 3 days lengthened to 5 as mired wagons tested tempers and storm gales, scoured the causeways. At the edge of the bog, Ellen's scouts located her missing outriders. 2 more dead. Limbs rimed with ice, though no frost lay upon the ground. Blue crescents marked their throats. Brienne insisted on burning the bodies despite rain. They built pyres from driftwood and oil, and Ellen spoke soft Valyrian dirges while flames sputtered high. Drogon paced restlessly, tasting air. No tracks marred the mud. Whatever killed them walked without imprint. That night, Ellen dreamed of a city of black ice where winged shadows crawled like ants across towers, their eyes mirrors of endless night. She awoke slick with sweat. Drogon watched, eyes narrow slits of embers, as if he too glimpsed something stirring in the dark beyond thought. 2 mornings later the army's vanguard crested a low ridge to see Winterfell's massive walls rising from fields of rippled gold wheat. The castle's granite towers bore fresh repair, yet still wore scars of fire and war. Smoke curled from chimneys. Banners of direwolf gray snapped in breeze. Hundreds of household guards lined parapets, spears glinting. When Drogon swept overhead, muffled cries rose, but no arrows flew. Wariness, not threat. The gates opened. Ellen entered under archways once blackened by Ramsay's torches, now scrubbed and consecrated by resilient hands. Courtyard cobbles rang beneath boots. Farmers paused hauling sacks of grain to stare in wonder. Children hid behind skirts, peeking with awed delight. Ellen dismounted, cloak dusting mud. The north smelled of pine resin, smoke, and distant snow. Jon Snow awaited beside the broken weirwood stump, transplanted to the center of the yard. His hair streaked with silver, a ghost of the boy once chosen Lord Commander. Hard lines etched his face, a map of losses. yet his gray eyes held calm measure. Beside him stood Arya Stark, her wolfish smile subdued, but no less sharp. They had come from far corners of memory, called by Sansa's raven. Jon inclined his head. "You fly a legend people thought buried with the Mad King's daughter." "I follow no ghosts," Ellen said, "though I honor what wisdom they left behind." She studied him. Rumor named him a Targaryen by blood. The truth danced between songs none dared sing aloud. "I believe you know dragons." His brief smile carried a decade of heartbreak. "I knew another once, briefly." He nodded toward Drogon coiled on the distant paddock. "He knew me too." Arya circled Ellen like a cat, eyes bright. "You wear hope like armor," she said. "Hope cracks louder than iron when struck. Be sure your heart is tempered." "I temper it every dawn," Ellen replied. The Starks exchanged glances, private rivers flowing beneath calm surface. Jon gestured toward the great hall. "Come." The North prepared bread and salt. "If doom marches, we must plan beyond sigils." Inside, warmth enveloped them. Roaring hearths, torches guttering in sconces fashioned of wrought iron wolves. Every highborn house in the North sent envoys. Even Asha Greyjoy, crowned in salt and iron at pike, stood present with her warhorn crew, ready to parley for coastal rights. A hush fell as Ellen entered. She felt weight of eyes. Fear, wonder, calculation. Sansa took the dais, voice steady as winter rivers. "The dragon seeks counsel, not conquest. Hear her." Ellen spoke of farmland, charred in crownlands by mercenary bands boiling for pay, of frost-rimmed wraiths stalking southern woods, of a throne fat with debt and thin with loyalty. She offered grain from the riverlands in exchange for blacksmiths to fashion new armor. She offered southern timber for rebuilding harbors in exchange for longships to patrol seas against pirates who now served the highest bidder. She offered, most of all, the shield of Drogon's shadow, but only if the North would lend its iron hearts to a realm knit by justice. There were questions, sharp as splinters, cast by Karstarks and Glovers. Why should we bleed again for southern follies? Ellen answered that folly unchallenged swallows the prudent as readily as the reckless. What of the free folk? Another demanded. She said the wall of suspicion had stood too long between blood of man. Who claims the Iron Throne? Yet another pressed. Ellen paused. Her answer rippled like a stone in pond. A throne unwilling to bend to its people's needs will break. Better to build something new. That last stirred murmurs. Even Jon tilted his head. Thrones rarely yielded without rivers of blood. Yet, as hearth flames crackled, some present heard in her words, not revolution, but redemption. Feasting followed. Mead flowed. Stories uncoiled. Arya shocked a group of Manderly knights by recounting how she slew a night king with the pointy end. They laughed until her cool gaze told them she jested not. Brienne won an arm wrestling bout against Asha Greyjoy, earning bawdy cheers and grudging respect. Doggedly, trade agreements were drafted on scraps of parchment sprinkled with gravy. Alliances hammered out between slices of venison pie. Politics smelled of smoke and sweat, no less binding for being forged beside laughter. Outside, snow began to fall, a scattering at first, then thickening to gentle hush. Summer snow. Men stepped into courtyards to watch white flakes settle on mail. Silence spread as though the world held its breath. Ellen instinctively sought Drogon. He stood rigid, wings half unfurled, eyes scanning the northern sky. She felt a pressure behind her eyes, like thunder withheld. The snow ceased as abruptly as it began. In its wake, the air tasted of iron and ice. That night, while most of Winterfell slept in mead-steeped stupor, a horn blast tore the darkness. Hollow, deep, different from any castle warning. Ellen jolted from restless dreams and sprinted to the ramparts. Shapes moved beyond the outer wall. A line of figures, pale and still, standing ankle-deep in fresh snow, though no track led to where they stood. Moonlight glazed them with unearthly sheen. Their eyes glimmered faint sapphire as they regarded the battlements in silence. Jon Snow appeared beside Ellen, sword already drawn. "Not seen since the long night," he whispered. "I prayed they were gone." Drogon's roar split the sky. He launched from his paddock, rushing low over the walls. Ellen felt heat bloom against her face as his belly scales kindled. He spewed a torrent of crimson gold flame across the field. Fire tore open night, turning snow to hissing vapor. Yet when brightness faded, the pale figures remained, ice steaming from limbs but unslain. Their leader raised one elongated hand. Frost spiraled upward, meeting lingering sparks and snuffing them with hiss like dying candles. A collective shiver went through the defenders. Sansa's voice rang out behind. "Archers!" Black-feathered shafts arced. They passed through the silent host as though through cobwebs. No cry, no stagger. The ice beings turned in unison and walked back into the trees, vanishing as silently as they came. Only melted snow remained, pooling darkly where flame had scoured ground. Ellen's heart hammered. Drogon landed, claws carving trenches. He breathed raggedly, confused by fire's impotence. She stroked his muzzle with trembling hand. Behind her, Arya's whisper carried, "No blade but one of dragonglass or Valyrian steel can bite them. And even then, do they rise again?" "We'll discover soon enough," Jon answered grimly. Dawn broke blood orange on snow-dusted roofs. In the great hall, war councils convened, words sharp as axes. Maester Colwyn confirmed old lore. The others, wights bound to a greater will, once fled dragonfire, yet what stalked the night wore that flame like mist. Perhaps new power clothed them. The room grew colder though hearths blazed. Ellen listened, weighing. Drogon's fire subdued armies, but not this creeping winter wrath. Yet flames still mattered, if tempered, if fused with steel sworn to stand unbroken. She remembered the caretaker's vow. Until rightful heir returns. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that rightful might not mean of blood, but of bond. To dragon, to people, to purpose. Perhaps Drogon had not chosen a dynasty so much as a path. She spoke only when debate frayed to near quarrel. "We cannot face foes we do not understand. Let me hunt their secrets. Give me time and trust. The throne may wait. The night will not." Jon leaned forward. "You want an army with mercy. Win knowledge with courage. Take whomever you need." She nodded. "I ride with small company. Swift. Silent. Drogon bears me. Should shadows assail, his roar will guide you." She looked to Brienne. The knight-clenched jaw. "Hold Winterfell. Train every smith on dragonglass, every child on arrow flight. Keep hope alive with song." Brienne's eyes shone. "I'll guard North's heart as my own." That afternoon she chose her party. Arya, whose feet kissed silence. Davos Seaworth, sea-born smuggler turned lord, for his cunning in dark corners. Maester Colwyn for knowledge. One silent sister sworn to the stranger for courage beyond fear. They rode light, cloaks dyed gray-white, provisions packed in satchels lined to resist frost. Drogon carried Ellen, while the others followed on nimble garrons. They departed in twilight, slipping through the partially thawed gate, remembered by ravens. Winterfell's walls receded, torches winking farewell. Jon watched till they vanished. Then he turned inward, issuing orders. For the first time since the long night, the North prepared not for winter, but for a war beneath winter's skin. The company crossed the King's Road north of Last Hearth at moonrise. Snow deepened, trees stood draped in crystal silence. They pushed east toward the unpeopled frosts beside the Bay of Seals, where rumor placed ancient barrows of the first men and stranger things besides. Drogon glided overhead, wingtips stirring white plumes. They journeyed in shifts, riding at dawn, resting by noon, pressing through dusk until stars stabbed like blue daggers. At the third camp, Arya returned from scouting with tracks unlike any she'd seen. Hoof-like yet too narrow, space too long. They followed them into a ruined hamlet where ice thickened on broken stones and patterns of roses. Within the blacksmith's collapsed hut, they found a corpse of a man, flesh charred though the building bore no burn. A shard of translucent crystal protruded from his chest, pulsing faintly. When Colwyn reached for it, the shard crumbled to powder, releasing a breath of cold so intense frost blossomed across the maester's sleeve. Drogon recoiled. smoke leaking from his nostrils. The silent sister murmured a prayer to all gods and none. They left quickly, burying the body beneath stones heavy with rime. That night, Ellen dreamed again. Of a heart of ice beating at the center of a labyrinth of glass spires. She woke with frost along eyelashes, though her bedroll lay near Drogon's smoldering flank. Fear tasted metallic. At dawn they struck west toward the mountains of the Dusklands, seeking high vantage. Snowstorms hunted them, forcing detours. On the fifth night, deep among pine valleys, they finally met their quarry. The forest fell silent, as if every creature held its breath. A thin silver fog rose from ground, glittering with motes of hoarfrost. Shapes emerged. 7 figures of ice-pale armor that reflected torchlight in fractured rainbows. Their leader bore no weapon visible. Instead, his right hand ended in a column of faceted crystal that shimmered with a cruel inner light. Arya slipped into shadows, but the figures had snapped immediately toward her hiding place, their senses beyond mortal. Ellen stepped forward, irises drawn. The sword's ruby heart pulsed violently as though tasting opposing power. She raised it above her head. Drogon roared overhead, banking to dive. The ice leader tilted his crystalline hand, and the roar died midair as a gust of frigid wind slammed into the dragon. Frost blossomed across Drogon's wings. He faltered, flapping frantically. Ellen felt their bond contort with pain. She snarled, slashing downward. A wave of fire erupted, hotter than any before, fueled by desperate will. It struck the ice troop, but not with the ravenous hunger that had consumed fields. This flame turned blue-white on contact, scorching yet clinging like molten sun. 2 figures shattered. Fragments tinkled onto snow like shards of glass bells. The leader raised his arm. Crystal facets glimmered. A beam of radiant cold lanced forward, colliding with Eris's. Sword and frost locked, light and shadow whirling. The ruby gem flared, reflecting silhouettes of dragons long dead. Ellen braced, boots skidding. She felt fire swirl up her arm, not burning but forging. Sparks shot skyward, where Drogon wings stiff with ice belched a spiraling plume that met the sword's glow. Merging, the leader staggered, ice cracking on his mantle. He shrieked, a sound like glaciers splitting, then retreated, dissolving into drifting snowflakes that hissed out. Silence rushed in. Ice fragments melted on ground. Drogon landed heavily, wings shaking. Frost sloughed away under the furnace of his blood. He nudged Ellen. She exhaled a gust of steam, fatigue rolling over her in crashing waves. Arya emerged, wide-eyed. She had seen heartbreak in distant lands, but not this. Davos, pale as winter sky, let out a breath. We just fought something that swallowed dragonfire. Not swallowed, Colwyn corrected hoarsely, but patterned. Their craft binds cold to mirror heat. Magic spun new in old bones. He knelt, gathering shards. Within fractured ice, streaks of crimson flame still flickered. He frowned. Fire, imprisoned in ice. Ellen gripped Eris's. The blade's glow subsided, but warmth lingered in her palm. She considered, heart pounding, that somehow the enemy had learned to adapt, just as she sought to adapt hearts. War is conversation, she reminded herself. One side speaks, the other answers. The answer here threatened to drown both fire and hope. They withdrew south, bearing evidence. Shards sealed in waxed cloth, Colwyn's hurried notes on observed phenomena. Drogon flew slower, conserving strength, but still majestic. Snowstorms pressed at their heels. On the second night of return they crossed an abandoned wildling camp. Crude spears ringed charred fire pits, but the snow within those rings was melted into glassy ice. Night closed around them like shutters. Finally, Winterfell's walls rose from swirling white. Horns announced their arrival. Healers trundled forward, murmuring when they saw cracks along Drogon's leading wing edges, but the dragon dismissed them with a roar, eager to roost near roaring hearths. In the hall, Ellen laid shards upon the high table. A hush rippled. Jon turned one over in palm. Within its refracted heart danced red gold sparks. Dragonfire, he whispered. Fettered, Sansa's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Our enemy learns. We must learn faster." Here, the narrative slowed as days folded into fevered study rather than march. Smiths of Winterfell hammered dragonglass into arrowheads quenched in oil and prayer. Colwyn and other maesters heated shards in crucibles of steel and wept when they erupted in blinding flashes that burned even iron. Arya drilled young archers, her face a mask of fierce patience. Brienne oversaw fortification of outer walls, integrating scorpions, redesigned to fling jars of wildfire, chilled with powdered obsidian, to ignite only on contact with flesh colder than death. Ellen walked battlements nightly, seeking communion with quiet stars. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the crystal hand raised, felt the chill that smothered flame. Yet inside that terror thrummed resolve like hammered gold. Drogon perched atop the first keep, wings mantled around his body against sleet, trusting her to bear the weight of dawn. One early morning, as gray light bled over the frost fangs, ravens arrived. From the riverlands, Dorne even distant Bravos. They spoke of unrest. Thornfield's mercenaries drilling outside King's Landing, Ironborn fleets massing near Cape Wrath, Tyroshi alchemists selling glass bombs that burst into winter frost, mimicking whatever power stalked the snows. The realm frayed. Ellen gathered her inner circle beneath the heart tree transplanted by Bran years earlier. Blood-red leaves rustled though wind lay still. "We face two wars," she said. "One of men's hearts, one of shadow's ice. We cannot fight both while scattered." Jon spoke quietly. "Win the South. Unify them under banner of survival, not rule. Then bring them north." "Then South bows to gold," Davos said. "Thornfield fattens his sellswords on promises of plunder." Ellen ran a thumb along Eris's hilt, feeling warmth stir. "Then we burn his promises to ash. But not with Drogon alone. With proof." She held up a shard. "Let the South see the face of night that comes. Let them choose flame." Plans simmered like stew. Arya volunteered to infiltrate King's Landing, to scatter shards in the throne room itself, to show courtiers the cold truth. Brienne insisted on guarding her path. Jon offered to ride with Ellen and Drogon to Harrenhal. Rallying river lords still wavered by memory of dragonfire. Sansa pledged grain caravans for armies, sealing letters with wolf and dragon entwined, a sigil newly minted by the castle's seamstresses. Preparations set, the hall buzzed with purpose. Outside, Winterfell's yards rang day and night, steel on steel, hammers on anvils, wings beating against rising wind. When snow fell, it did not linger. Forges kept ground hot. Farmers harvested late wheat under torchlight, singing. On the eve of departure, Ellen stood upon the outer wall. The sky was clear, stars riveting its velvet. Footsteps approached, Jon, hooded, ghost padding silent beside. He stood shoulder to shoulder, gazing north. "I once thought destiny a chain," he said. "But perhaps it's a bridge anyone may cross." "Elenda told me something like that," Ellen replied, caught off guard by memory. Her mother's voice in dusty Volantis markets. She smiled ruefully. "A bridge still bears weight." He nodded, gloved fingers idly scratching ghosts rough. "When you fly south tomorrow, remember the North's faith travels with you. Not blind faith, earned." "Dad." She touched his arm. "I will guard it as my own." Ghost whuffed. Drogon rumbled an answer from the keep, two predators acknowledging kinship across vast difference. For a moment, the night felt vast yet intimate, a loom where fate and choice braided. Morning cracked open on wings of red as Drogon and Ellen departed Winterfell's walls, Jon riding beneath with a cadre of mounted archers. Arya and Brienne left earlier still, melting into dawn mist through the Wintertown gate. Banner lines snapped, a new sigil. Dragon on one side, direwolf on the other, tails entwined. Children cheered. Old men touched foreheads in wonder. High above, Drogon caught thermal currents, bearing Ellen south at speeds birds envied. She looked back once to see Winterfell shrink to gray knot among snowy plains. Below, Ghost loped alongside riders until he became speck. She faced forward. Ahead lay Harrenhal's molten towers, crownlands shivering under mercenary yoke, fleets gathering on restless seas, and a throne yet unwon. But first and always, a night within ice reaching for day. She pressed knee to Drogon's scale. The sword upon her back hummed. Wind tore at her cloak, carrying distant scents of salt and smoke, and something colder than either. She tasted it, accepted its challenge, and let the world fall away as dragon and rider cleaved the brightening sky. Drogon's wings hammered the fragile morning light into ribbons of molten gold as he arced southward, each down beat scattering cloud wisps like frightened swallows. From her seat between the serrated spines, Ellen felt the damp chill of the north give way to the crisp tang of autumn skies. Frosted breath faded, replaced by the scent of distant heather and the coppery trace of turning leaves. Wind whipped hair across her cheeks in silver-tipped strands. Below, Jon Snow and his Riverland outriders were already a league behind, reduced to a smear of moving dust on the King's Road. She allowed Drogon to climb higher still, optimal height for speed, until the world curved beneath them like a half-finished bowl. She planned their descent with the precision of a mason setting keystones. First stop Harrenhal. The castle's glut of charred stone and mournful legends made it the perfect anvil upon which to hammer the Riverlord's wavering loyalties into tempered steel. From there, she would cross the God's Eye and follow the Trident southeast, covering distance faster than ravens and painting fresh memory of dragon shadow across fields Thornfield's mercenaries presumed secure. Let them flinch at every flicker of wing. Fear would loosen more coin purses than swords. Hours melted under the relentless beat of wings. Noon found Drogon skimming above yellow marshes of the Neck, his passage scattering herons and raising barnacle-encrusted hulks where long-forgotten boats had sunk. Ellen marked the greening of the river water, then the sudden wideness as tributaries fed the Trident. She guided Drogon into a shallow glide. Heat shimmered across armored plates, the sword Eris's vibrating against her back like a tuning fork searching for the right note of fate. Harrenhal clawed the horizon by mid-afternoon. Sunlight struck the broken towers at slant angles, so each looked like a candle stub of black wax, pools of shadow gathering where melted stone sagged from ancient dragonfire. Even now, centuries later, small curls of steam sometimes rose from vents in the fused rock, giving the air a sulphurous bite that set travelers' teeth on edge. Ellen banked Drogon once, twice, a dwindling spiral. Below, she counted sigils fluttering over the gatehouse: Mallister's Silver Eagle, Blackwood Black Raven, Frey Blue Tower, and farther down the outer courtyard, the Triskelion of House Vance. More than she hoped, fewer than she needed. They landed in a thunderclap of displaced air. Soldiers scattered, ducks flapped madly from a stagnant pond, and banners snapped against stone with staccato violence. By the time Ellen dismounted, Lord Edmure Tully had arrived flanked by half his guard, his eyes still large with the childlike awe that overtook him each time Drogon appeared. He bowed, perhaps more deeply than protocol required, but gratitude shone fresh. His people's grain now flowed safely north under Dragon's shadow. "Your Grace," he began, habitual courtesy running faster than thought. "Not yet, my lord," Ellen interrupted softly. "Best keep titles sheathed like daggers until the board is set." Edmure reddened, but nodded toward the great hall. The lords wait within. Some came curious, others, he grimaced, from obligation. A few arrived at dawn, seeking leave to depart before you arrive. They'll stay. He seemed to grow an inch at her confidence. Together, they strode beneath the widow's tower arch. The interior smelled of damp stone, furnace ash, and simmering meat. Torches flickered along walls pocked by ancient heat. Lords and ladies gathered along the periphery like wary deer, leaving the center bare. Murmurs stifled to silence when she entered. Ellen did not mount the dais. Symbols mattered, and distance bred distrust. She stopped at the hall's midpoint, unlatched her cloak, and tossed it over a fallen block of stone, so the red-black fabric spilled like fresh ink. Irises she unslung carefully, cradling the blade flat across open palms, ruby pommel glowing with a subdued pulse. "You know my name," she began, voice carrying clear on the high vaults. "But names alone cannot guard children, nor plow fields, nor hold fast against ice things that shrug off flame. I flew today to ask what you will do when night that walks will not respect your harvest tides or your walls. I come bearing one dragon. I aim to wake 100,000 beating hearts." She met eyes, one by one. Lord Piper's skeptic blue, Lady Blackwood's stern brown, Sir Hostine Frey's cold calculation. "Lend me yours. We forge a realm where riverlords ride north to defend wall sentries, and northern axes march south to break sieges before they begin. Where grain moves as free as water, and a child in Seaguard fears winter no more than one in White Harbor fears drought." "Madame?" Lord Piper barked a laugh. "Pretty vision, lady, but lords hang vision next to trophies. Show me coin." Ellen pivoted, pointing heiresses at the sagging ceiling. Coin melted Harrenhal to ruin, and bought armies that shattered kingdoms thrice over. Coin promises everything, devours more. I offer what coin cannot buy, dragonfire and the shield of unity to wield it safely. No. Sir Hostin crossed arms, the bull-necked Frey already impatient. "Shield is well, but who wields the sword? Who sets laws? All this talk of unit, under whose crown?" Edmure stepped forward, but Ellen raised a hand. "Let them see leader, not puppet. The crown we inherit is debt-loosened iron that bleeds any who sit. I mean to recast it. I model rule after service, a council with voices from each region. No more single iron throat choking all rivers." She let silence stretch. "If my vision fails, your swords remain yours. But if it succeeds, you will tell your grandchildren you dared help birth it." Lady Blackwood's lips parted in small wonder. Her people revered stories. The other lords weighed risk like merchants at scales. Frey's eyes drifted to Drogon's silhouette visible through the shattered window. Coin or no, that symbol eclipsed hesitation. One by one, they knelt. Not deeply, not wholly convinced, but knees kissed stone. When Hostine Frey at last went down, resentment etched across his jaw. Ellen felt a subtle knot slacken inside her ribs. That evening contracts were inked in blood and wine. Riverlands would supply 4,000 spears, and half their harvest wagons for winter stores at Winterfell. In return, Ellen promised reconstruction of the stone bridge at Fair Market and safeguard of ferry commerce along the Trident. She signed her name plainly. Ellen. No epithet, because until the realm itself anointed a title she would not prematurely crown ambition. By dawn, Drogon and she were airborne again, edged by a trailing squadron of Malornwood arrow shafts strapped to a courier wyvern brought from Tarth's breeding eyrie. The distance from Harrenhal to King's Landing was less than a day's wingbeat for Drogon. But she set a curving route downriver, ensuring outlying hamlets glimpsed the shadow and told the tale in taverns by dusk. The dragon flies south, bartered not by terror, but treaty. Rumor, she'd learned, was the cheapest cavalry. Near Duskendale she spotted smoke columns where none should be. Drogon spiraled lower, wings sculling air. A village burned. 5 cottages collapsed, thatch roaring red. Men in striped pentoshi, sashes doused torches, dragging weeping youths toward a makeshift pen, while a line of sellswords stood guard. The green barley beyond trampled flat by horse hooves. She counted 36 mercenaries, some still drunk on pillage. An easy show of strength would save the captives, but a measured show would save 1,000 more across Crownlands. She guided Drogon into a dive that ended feet above the outer fence, air blast toppling wooden stakes, mercenaries thrown backward like dolls. Before they could scramble, she dismounted, landing amid swirling dust. Heiresses flashed halfway from scabbard, its ruby flared like a small sun. "Release them," she ordered, her voice iron-wrapped in calm. The nearest sellsword blinked at steel, and dragon behind. A second reached for crossbow. Half turned too slow. Drogon hissed, a gout of flame searing grass inches from the man's boots. He dropped the bow, hands blister red. A grizzled captain with a Tiroshi tattoo stepped forward, We hold warrant from Lord Thornfield. Requisition of levies. Ellen's jaw tightened. Warrant signed in fear is void. You stand in stolen ashes. The new realm will judge theft lightly today, harshly tomorrow. Don't Zeus. She waited, heart steady. Behind, children sobbed. The captain ran a tongue over cracked lips, weighing 28 men against one dragon. He barked an order. Sellswords tossed weapons into the mud. Ellen signaled villagers. They herded captives free. She made the mercenaries dig trenches and bury the dead livestock they'd slaughtered. When done, she offered them a choice. Ride east to River Run and swear service under Edmure's command, or leave Westeros by the next tide. Most chose River Run. A few fled toward the Blackwater. Ellen let them carry panic with them like sparks in dry wheat. By sundown, Dragonstone's volcanic isle rose from the bay's blue mouth. Temple-like chimneys exhaled lazy threads of smoke, and on the tallest tower perched the caretaker, the silver-haired sentinel who'd greeted her weeks past, hands clasped at the rail. She circled once, letting Drogon roar greeting. It echoed off basalt with cathedral resonance. Then they veered west, the Red Keep's jagged silhouette emerging against a bruising sunset. King's Landing had changed since last she spied its rooftops. Boarded storefronts lined Flea Bottom. Whores Lane was eerily quiet. The Blackwater's harbor teemed with unmarked caravels, sails dyed a mercenary's drab gray. On the city walls, new Scorpion engines bristled, rushed work, vulnerable seams gaping where carpenters patched haste with rope instead of iron pins. She counted. 32 Scorpions flanking the western battlements, 19 portside, but none yet on the old Sept Plateau. Incompetence or shortage, both exploitable. Rather than announce arrival, she sailed beyond urban glare to the forested spur, north of the city where Maegor the Cruel once erected a hunting lodge. The place lay in ruin, ivy choking stone, antlers rotting to dust, but its cellars remained intact. There she briefly sheltered, sliding from Drogon's scaled shoulders. He curled amid towering cedars, wings folding with soft, leathery susurration. She fed him a side of sheep, hauled from Harrenhal's stores, then spread her weather-stained maps across a mossy slab. Night peeled the last color from the sky. The time for stealth had arrived. Arya would already be prowling inside the capital's veins. On cue, a gyrfalcon circled above, dropping a leather-bound tube. Ellen caught it, unfolded the scrap. Drawn in charcoal, a rough floor plan of the throne room. Scrawl reading, "Wildfire stockpiles halved. Sellsword morale low. 43 children hidden in Sept of Baelor as leverage." Arya's hand, a smear of crimson wax beside her name, meant she had cited the High Council, but not yet struck. Brienne's cramped note beneath, "Hold 3 days." Ellen ground her teeth. Thornfield's cruelty in hiding behind innocent shields was the oldest tactic of weak despots. Drogon could not blaze Sept walls if lives pinned beneath them. She needed precision. Through black hours she planned. She studied supply lines into the city, grain cart gates, night soil wagons, merchant barges on the river. She charted timing between torch patrols and the period just before dawn, when city guard changed shifts amid bleary yawns. She weighed fear's value. Burn one Scorpion and panic might extinguish the rest. Torch a single mercenary pay chest and Sellswords might riot among themselves. Limitless options, no room for error. The second dawn painted a pale smear of peach across the horizon. In its hush, Ellen unfolded once more the letter she carried tucked against her heart, edges soft from handling. The response Sansa had penned before she departed. "The colder the night, the nearer the dawn, but dawn will not come uninvited." She slipped it away, cinched bracers and mounted Drogon. They rose straight into the burgeoning light, angling east around the city's outer walls until she hovered above the bay mouth. Sun-gold haloed towers, windows glittered like dragon scales. No horn sounded. They had not yet spotted her silhouette against the glare. She inhaled steady, then nudged Drogon forward, low and swift, across the masts of anchored Sellsword ships. Sailors shouted too late. The dragon's talons raked a mast in passing, splintering it into toothpicks that rained onto deck. A single spurt of flame into the pitch-lined hull set it blossom bright. Alarm bells clanged. She banked inland, streaking above the fish market. Crowds scattered, yet she saw faces upturned, not with terror alone, but with raw hope, sparks lit by rumor's tinder. She let Drogon scream, a call more warning than threat, then rocketed toward the Red Keep. Scorpion crews scrambled, but she chose her approach along the blind arc where towers shielded line of sight. Talons slammed onto the narrow terrace outside the Tower of the Hand, stone cracking under weight. She dismounted before the first bolts thudded overhead. Doors burst inward. Gold cloaks surged, clumsy in bulky armor. Drogon unleashed a fan of fire across the parapet, slagging metal, but Ellen was already inside. Silence her cloak. Narrow corridors wound like veins. She navigated by memory and Arya's sketch. At each intersection, she pressed palm to heated stone, feeling vibrations, subtle tell of footfalls. She avoided confrontation where possible. When not, Eris's hummed once and bodies dropped, blood sizzling upon its edge. Within 10 minutes, she reached the antechamber of the throne room. 2 guards stood flanking gilded doors, faces pale at dragon shrieks outside. They lifted spears. She lifted empty hand. "Tell your lord I come unarmed," she lied smoothly. Confusion choked their reaction long enough for her to step between them. Slap spear shafts aside, and hilt strike, each temple. They slumped soundless. She pushed the towering doors. They creaked, old agony in polished bronze. Inside, the iron throne glittered under morning shafts, barbed shadows skittering over red marble floor. Lord Thornfield sat stiff atop the spire-bladed seat, crown askew, sweat tracing hairline. Around him hovered Taroshi guard captains, their beards striped in false bravado. Behind the throne, a frightened septa held a boy no older than 10, one of the hostages. Thornfield rose halfway, clutching armrest spikes. "Dragon whore," he rasped. "I have children, you have fire. Who yields first?" Ellen paced 10 deliberate steps forward, blades still sheathed. "Release them. Bend knee. Retain your seat as Lord of Kings landing under United Council. Resist, and you watch your allies flee while your city burns around only you." He laughed, a high, brittle cackle. "You think cells would scatter at shadow? I own their pockets." "No. Pockets leak when ripped by panic." She flicked 2 fingers. Outside the stained glass, a concussive boom rattled panes. Drogon targeting a scorpion emplacement. No lethal flame, just destructive thunder. Dust drifted upon the throne dais. Thornfield flinched. Still, pride clawed deeper than sense. "You threaten innocence with that beast, yet preach unity. Hypocrite." Ellen shook her head. "I threaten tyrants with their own fear. The innocents stand behind you, in danger because of you." Her gaze slid to septa and boy. She softened voice. "Step away, child." The septa hesitated, searching Thornfield's scowling eyes, then gently guided the boy along the wall. Slow retreat. A Taroshi captain snarled something in Valyrian and lunged. Ellen was a blur. Unsheathing Eris's, parrying downward dispatch, pivoting to sever halberd shaft of second attacker in same motion. Ruby stone flared like sunrise on armor. Captain collapsed, armor sizzling where blade touched. Panic rippled through guard line. 2 dropped weapons outright. Thornfield's facade shattered. He drew a slim stiletto, pointed at the boy, shaking. "One step, and I carve him ear to ear." Ellen froze. The room's breath hitched. Her peripheral vision located shifting tapestry shadows, Arya's outline hidden. She kept focus, buying seconds. "You sit on a throne of blades, because history shaped you dull," she said. "But blades remember sharper uses." She angled body, presenting clear strike lane. Thornfield's lips peeled back. "Last chance." He tightened grip, fingers white, then flicked glance instinctively at door for escape. That flick was Arya's cue. The tapestry rippled. She erupted behind Thornfield, cat fast, slashing the tendon at his wrist. Stiletto clattered. Thornfield screamed. Arya's second strike hilt-checked his skull. The Lord crumpled unconscious across the throne's iron barbs. Silence returned, brittle as glass. Ellen exhaled, shoulders slumping. The Taroshi guards, leaderless, backed away, hands raised. The Septa wept, clutching boy. Arya wiped blade on Thornfield's velvet. He talked too much. Brienne appeared at door, armor blood splattered but unbowed. Gatehouse surrendered. Mercenaries saw Scorpion burn, mutinied. City's ours. For now. Nessernauen. Ellen nodded, but her gaze fixed on the Iron Throne. Ugly lattice of swords fused by Aegon's fire, symbol of rule through fear. It radiated malice, as though resentful that it would not taste her blood. She turned to Brienne. Send riders. Proclaim Council of Lords to convene here 10 days hence. In meantime declare safe passage for small folk. Post bread prices. Open granaries. Remove Thornfield to cells. Alive, he will face judgment under new order. Brienne saluted, already barking orders down corridor. Arya joined Ellen at dais. What of the throne? We leave it, Ellen said slowly. Its story warns louder than its seat rules. She touched a single blade. Cold, jagged steel. Eris's warmed in answer. Heat diffusing like sunrise across frost. She pictured a different throne, perhaps of living tree or shaped stone. Not yet. Outside, Drogon roared triumph that rattled windows but did not shatter them. People in the streets, seeing no fire, only the dragon's silhouette framed in midday sun, raised tentative cheers. Bells pealed, some war-bent, some jubilant. Change rolled through the capital like a tide. Before dusk, she summoned city masons to remove the throne from the hall, not destroy but relocate. To the Dragon Pit ruins. Turned museum of past mistakes. She oversaw the heavy chains looped around spires, the groaning heave as men dragged ancient symbol across marble. Sparks flew, iron squealed. Many watched, slack-jawed. When at last the dais stood empty, an expanse of cracked stone lit by golden gloom. Ellen felt room breathe easier. No sooner had she caught a rare moment of stillness than ravens arrived from Winterfell. Brienne delivered the parchment. Jon's quick hand. Others, massing at Queen's Crown, 5 leagues from last hearth. Sentinels report ice giants wielding crystal clubs. Need every flame. North marches to hold line, but cannot alone. Hurry. Ellen pressed lips tight. Freshborn council or not, the deeper night advanced. She summoned lords within the Red Keep at dawn. Edmure newly arrived. Lord Piper, the Taroshi captains who bent knee after surrender. Even ironborn envoys smuggled ashore by evening tide. Candlelight flickered on weary faces. The north stands at precipice, she informed them. Voice measured steel. We depart at sunrise. Dragon. Armies. Every smith who can forge dragonglass. Every alchemist who can bottle wildfire. The riverlands already move grain along the King's Road. We require ships for coast supply and scouts to map weather patterns unnatural to ice legions. A murmur like wind through reeds. Most agreed. One Taroshi captain balked. Wu signed for coin to defend capital, not freeze on moors. Ellen met his gaze. Fail the moors, and capital freezes next. She let Drogon's roar punctuate from beyond keep walls. The captain swallowed, nodded. Logistics spun through night. Quartermasters tallying salted mutton. Fletchers crating arrows tipped with black glass. Maesters decanting jars of wildfire into reinforced wagons lined with wet sand. Children liberated from the sept were escorted to the Dragon Pit, where healers and septons provided respite. Thornfield's jail cell echoed with his impotent threats, until Arya silenced him with a warning whisper of northern ghosts. He shrunk to sullen mutters. Ellen walked ramparts before dawn, stars bleeding out overhead. She thought of the Iron Throne lying half buried in Dragon Pit rubble, a relic humbled. She thought of Sansa's measured trust, Jon's steady eyes, winter winds howling across an ancient wall. She thought of her mother's lullaby in broken Valyrian. Fire forges dawn from darkest night. She breathed deep, feeling the sword's comforting weight, and Dragon's pulse thrumming through stone. Sunrise spilled blood and honey light across Blackwater Bay. Ships unfurled sails bearing hastily stitched dragon wolf sigils. Wagons rolled through Lion Gate, axle grease shining. wheels wrapped in rawhide to muffle squeal. Drogon climbed the sky, trailing a roar that woke pigeons and startled clouds. At his shadow, a throng of free folk children cheered, their voices high and clear. Ellen mounted, muscles singing protest from sleepless nights. She surveyed the mustering forces. Riverland spears in muddy tunics, Tyroshi pikemen adjusting borrowed furs, gold cloaks who had discarded tarnished cloaks for plain leather, ashamed yet determined, smiths on mules laden with forging tools, maesters fussing over crates of wildfire, and far below small folk lined along streets, eyes shining with something resembling fate. She raised Eris's high, the ruby heart catching dawn. "We ride for the wall," she cried, voice carried on wind. "We ride for every hearth in Westeros, every cradle yet unfilled, every name history would silence. We ride, and we return with dawn." New roars, cheers, clatter deafened thought. Drogon surged upward, tilting east then north like a compass needle drawn to home. Behind her, ships slipped from harbor prows slicing pewter waves. Columns of riders spread across King's Road, banners rustling. Bells rang again, this time brighter. Ellen leaned forward, feeling dragon heat seep through leathers. Clouds parted before them, crisp, blue dot. Somewhere far ahead, shadowed spires of ice marched toward Realm's heart. She did not know if fire alone could halt them, if unity could truly fuse disparate peoples, or if dawn would greet her living eyes. But she felt faith like a forge bellows in her chest, stoked by winter wind, and she had a dragon, and a sword that sang when darkness rose. They flew, and the realm held its breath. Below, lords confronted terrified populace with new decrees. Grain free to cold camps on the wall, craftsmen exempt from tithe, ravens bearing news hourly. Ships creaked north laden with obsidian ore from Dragonstone's mines, smithed arrowheads clinking in barrels. Wildling tribes migrating south found gates open at the gift, fires waiting. For the first time in living memory, the wall shadow welcomed, not suspicion, but alliance. High above, Drogon's body cast a cross-shaped silhouette across fields, where farmers paused plowing to watch, hearts thundering with dread-tinged hope. Children pointed skyward, shouting, "Phoenix!" a name echoing through hamlets and holdfasts, nightly by hearthflame. By twilight of the fifth day, the vanguard glimpsed last hearth's distant smoking ruins, ice-frosted even in summer. Petrol horns tapered into hollow dirge. Joan's northern host had deployed in trenches south of Queenscrown, their campfires guttered under unnatural cold. Ellen directed Drogon downward, felt his muscles tense at palpable chill, leaking into sky like ink. Frost crystals formed along wing edges mid-glide. She landed on cramped bluff above camp. Jon greeted her in lamplight, snow plastering his hair, though skies remained cloudless. His grim face eased at her arrival. "They come at midnight," he stated. "Our scouts' watch columns form beyond lake." He pointed to distant flickerless blue glows weaving through tree line. Approach of the others. Brienne arrived horseback, armor rimed in ice, but eyes fierce. Arya slipped from shadows, cloak dazzling white, whispering that the host numbered perhaps 6,000 specters. Flanked by colossal shadows she likened to ice giants. Still fewer than they'd feared, Ellen noted. But each white demanded more than mortal steel. They convened war council inside a battered command tent. Sansa, having marched south with a contingent of Manderley pikemen, pored over crude maps beside maesters from Winterfell and Old Town. Davos sharpened dragonglass daggers, recounting past horrors at Hardhome. Young Theon's niece, Lady Willa, amused none by joking she'd bring kraken fire if sea froze north enough. Plan formed quick, infantry lines anchored by trenches filled with pitch to be ignited by wildfire. Archers with obsidian arrows on ridgelines. Scorpion ballista crews ready to hurl jars of liquid flame into clustered whites. Drogon would fly flank, striking giants before they reached walls. Ellen would wield Eris's where enemy commanders, those crystalline lieutenants, breached ranks. Night settled like iron. Temperature plummeted until breath hung solid. The sky, devoid of moon, revealed impossible brightness of stars. sharp daggers embedded in velvet. Snow drifted in still air, each flake an intricate carving of six-armed symmetry, glowing faint blue as if catching light from some subterranean lantern. The first horn sounded when silence felt eternal. Distant thunder of bone drums rose, shaking frost from evergreen boughs. Out of forest gloom poured the army of death, wolves of ice bounding ahead, their howls cracking stone, whites marching in disjoint rhythm, armor glazed white, towering figures hewn of ice, halos of sub-zero mist swirling around their club fists. At their core moved the lieutenants, crystalline arms humming in eerie resonance. Blue light pulsed in synchronized heartbeats through the host. Archers loosed. Black shafts traced parabolic storms, many finding marks, shattering brittle bone, but too few. Giants swung clubs, smashing trenches, sending northern shields bouncing. Fire trenches ignited. Whoosh, lurid green wildfire surging. Screams of melting whites rose. Yet ice giants plunged through flame unscathed, supercooled auras snuffing heat with hissing jets of steam. Drogon descended, jaws glaring. He unleashed a torrent of incandescent fire. Two giants staggered, skins cracking, but reformed immediately. New frost plating over molten wounds. The dragon circled, confused. Ellen leapt from saddle midair, irises blazing. She landed atop a giant's shoulder, blade driving through crystal ribcage. The giant shrieked, froze mid-motion, and crumbled to shards beneath her boots. Understanding burst inside her mind. The sword's unique bond with dragonfire, its forging in Valyria's dying throes, alone could sever the animating spell. She shouted to Jon, to Brienne, "Strike, commanders! Only they fall." She sprinted across battlefield, Drogon tailwind clearing space. Arya darted like wraith, hamstringing whites with obsidian daggers. Brienne, mounted on massive destrier, hammered lieutenant with dragonglass-tipped lance. Ice shattered, releasing captive sparks of dragonfire that incinerated dozens of surrounding whites. Momentum shifted. Still, battle raged vicious. One lieutenant raised arm and hurled spear of ice toward Drogon. It struck the left wing membrane. The dragon roared, faltering but staying aloft. Ellen's heart wrenched, but she pressed onward, carving path to spear thrower. Two swift arcs of Aresses severed his legs. She finished with an overhead cleave that split the torso. Blue light extinguished. Northmen rallied, chanting old gods' names. Scorpions thumped, sending wildfire jars into densest clusters. Each explosion cast emerald halos. Whites stumbling aflame only to burst into glowing cinders. Yet enemy numbers seemed endless, and fatigue crept. Frost bit deeper, armor joints stiffening. Jon slid on ice, parried White's axe, barely regained foothold when another swung. Ghost leapt, saving him. Sansa, directing reserves behind lines, saw a breach where Whites crawled under collapsed trench. She snatched bow from a fallen guard, loosed arrow after arrow despite freezing fingers, each shot true. Above, Drogon wheeled, wounded wing trailing black smoke, but still rained flame on flanks. Ellen signaled him toward the far ridge where final lieutenant rallied ice giants. She sprinted after, lungs searing. Snow swirled, visibility waning. She found him, taller than others, crystalline crown cresting brow. At his side, an enormous beast of ice reminiscent of a bear roared. Aresses pulsed with molten joy. She charged. The bear leapt. Drogon crashed onto it mid-air, jaws closing over frozen spine, wings beating to maintain hold. They tumbled, claw and fang. Ellen met the crowned lieutenant. He swung staff of blue sorcery, shards whirling. She ducked, rolled, slashed. Staff parried but chipped. Each strike of Aresses left scarlet glow crawling across ice veins. Suddenly a horn blast. Jon burst from blizzard, long claw shining pale. Together, they pressed. Lieutenant staggered. Jon drew attention high, Ellen sliced low, shearing the crystalline limb. The sorcerer screeched. Jon stabbed upward under jaw. Ellen completed arc through torso. Body fractured, emitting piercing sound. In its death pulse, a wave of frost blossomed outward, freezing every wight within 30 yards. Mid-motion statues. Silence fell like shroud. Across battlefield, enemy ranks faltered, then shattered like glass towers under hammer rain. Giants collapsed. Wolves cracked. Lesser wights collapsed inert. Dawn's first light spilled over treetops, turning frozen fragments into glittering sea. The living stood trembling among shards, breath pluming. Some cried. Others laughed brokenly. Brienne leaned on sword, blood freezing to gauntlet. Arya knelt beside fallen friend, face unreadable. Sansa emerged, hair rimed white, surveying ruin with iron eyes. Jon clasped Ellen's forearm. Between them, Eris's and Longclaw crossed, red and silver, symbol of born and forged. Drogon landed nearby, panting, injuries smoking but eyes bright. Ellen pressed forehead to hot scale. "Rest," she whispered. "We live." In hours that followed, they burned white fragments in pyres fueled by fallen timber and dragonflame, until nothing of sorcery remained. Maesters collected crystal shards for study, but many dissolved into mist once removed from cold. Survivors were counted, far fewer than expected. Losses grievous but not ruinous. Among dead, they found Sir Willis Manderley, grin still fierce even in death, arms shielding 2 young archers. They buried him beneath cairn of riverstones transported north for the purpose. Singing Merman's lament. At council that evening, under rough pavilion, Jon proposed immediate march beyond the wall to eradicate root of threat. Ellen urged caution. Drogon's wound needed days to mend, armies needed rest. Sansa seconded, reminding that Southern Realm must not implode in absence. Compromise. Scouts to range, fortify new line. Prepare joint expedition once reinforcements arrived from Vale and Dorne, now sailing up narrow sea. Letters would carry victories to bolster morale. Brienne produced a battered crown she found among Thornfield's abandoned regalia. She offered it, yet Ellen shook her head. "Not forged by those I serve," she said, "nor tempered by night we shared." Instead, she asked each region's smith to bring unique sigil metal, to weld them into circlet representing all. Council agreed. In the days after, snows melted slightly. Minor thaw, but omen that ice magic receded. Camps bustled with new purpose. Maesters studied captured Lieutenant Crystal, learning that Dragonfire's resonance disrupted the magic matrix, knowledge to craft future weapons. Children of the forest, rumored extinct, emerged shyly, offering obsidian caches in exchange for promise to heal weirwood groves scarred by battle. Evenings, fires blazed bright. Songs new forged spread. Ballads of Phoenix Queen, of Wolf Regent, of Sword of Dawnfire cutting winter's heart. Ellen listened from edges, humility warring with responsibility. Jon joined, cup of hot wine thawing weary bones. "They already crown you in verse," he teased gently. "Verse shifts quicker than loyalty," she answered. Yet warmth stirred. On the 10th dawn, a raven from Dragonstone. Caretaker reported small dragon eggs pulsing in vault's depths, awakened by Drogon's return. Blood of the dragon multiplies when nurtured by hope. She read message aloud. Marvel swept camp. Children cheered. Brienne winked. Sansa allowed rare smile. Arya simply nodded, as if destiny ticked boxes on a list. That night, under kaleidoscope of northern lights ignited by lingering magic, Ellen walked alone to Ridge, where earlier battle frost still clung. She plunged Eris's tip into icy earth, kneeling before sword like penitent. Wind whispered secrets of flame and snow. She reflected on path, desert encounter, Volantis nights, Dragonstows calling chambers, heart-pounding dives into war. She realized rule was not moment, but lifelong forging, blade tempered again and again. Behind her came Sansa's quiet tread. The Lady of Winter knelt opposite, hands bare on cold. They shared silence until words felt unnecessary. Packed deeper than treaties glowed between them. When Ellen rose, sword free, She turned to see multitudes beyond. Jon, Brienne, Arya, Davos, Mesters, soldiers, wildlings, children peeking behind legs. All stood in patchwork ranks, faces lit by shifting auroras, each expression holding unguarded awe and fierce affection. Brienne stepped forward, cleared throat. "The time to temper crown has come," she announced. She produced circlet newly forged, 6 metals braided, Valyrian steel thread, pale winter silver from White Harbor, red gold of the Reach sent north by Raven, black iron from Pike, shining bronze of the Vale, and orange sun steel of Dornish forges. At its front, gem of obsidian cradled spark of captured dragonfire, glowing softly. Brienne sank to knee, arms presenting. One by one the council joined, lords and peasants alike, lowering even wildling chiefs crouching awkwardly. Jon remained standing, meeting Ellen's eyes before giving a single respectful nod. "Realm chooses its light," he murmured. Ellen's throat tightened. She accepted circlet, hot from forge yet warm with more than heat. She lifted it not to her head but high towards sky, wordless vow. Then, slowly, she set it upon her brow. Auroras brightened as if answering signal. Drogon roared, trembling the horizon. Voices erupted. Cheers carrying names she barely recognized as her own. Ellen of Stormheart, Phoenix Queen, Dragonwolf Uniter. She closed eyes, letting sound wash. She felt no heavy weight of iron, only lightness of shared hope. When she opened them, she saw a dawn cracking behind distant mountains. The real dawn, sunlight wakened by aeons of turning earth. She whispered gratitude to gods old and new, to fire and ice balanced. War still loomed, rebuild ahead monstrous. But tonight, for the first time, Westeros stood not fractured, but fused in fragile gold seam of unity. Dragons would hatch, councils would argue. Ice might rise again. Yet Ellen believed now, with bone-deep certainty, that forged together, hearts could burn brighter than any solitary flame. She raised heiresses, blade blazing rosy with first sunray. Cheers redoubled, echoing to farthest pines, washing over ancient wallstones, drifting beyond seas to distant free cities. Somewhere across sunrise a new age listened, and in the hush between roar and wind, Ellen heard the world, once broken by fire, begin to heal. Ka. The wind off the shivering sea cut like a whetted blade as Ellen stood atop the half-collapsed barbican of last hearth, the fur-lined mantle around her shoulders snapping in the gale. Down in the courtyard the smith fires flared and guttered, coughing sparks into the purple pre-dawn while hammer beats rang anvil sharp. Dragon glass arrowheads, new spear tips, links for the growing collars of chain that Brienne meant to stretch across killing fields for the next battle. Every clang echoed off stone still rhymed with a skin of sorcery frost, a faint reminder of the army they had just broken, and of the greater host they knew must be gathering somewhere beyond the pale horizon. Beyond the outer gate, Ghost padded through drifted snow, bright eyes sweeping for threats no one else could smell. Jon had left the direwolf free to range as he conferred with Maester Colwyn below, on how many wagon loads of grain could safely be spared south, without starving the watch posts here. Trade caravans rolled north every day now. Malornwood wagons from River Run, mule trains out of the Vale, sleek Myrish galleys muscling up the narrow sea despite early pack ice. But Jon insisted the lairds of the Gift eat first. For if the north starved, the unity Ellen had forged would dissolve like hoarfrost in sudden spring. She drew breath through numb lips and tasted the scents riding the wind. Wood smoke, hot pitch, the iron tang of freshly forged steel, the faint musk of thousands of people jammed inside walls not built to house so many. And beneath it all, fainter but unmistakable, that subtle dragon reek of fired stone and living furnace. Drogon reposed on a half-collapsed tower 3 bowshots distant, wings mantled against the cold, but even dormant he radiated presence like a slow-pulsing sun. Soon, she knew, he would need open skies and fresh prey. Soon, she would need to free him to hunt, or risk the hunger that made dragons reckless. Majesty. She turned. Brienne of Tarth mounted the stair, helm tucked beneath one arm. battered surcoat still dusted with the crystal grit that had been an ice giant's knee. The taller woman planted steel boots on frost-slick stone and surveyed the campfires below, her expression carved from slate. "The smiths ask more coal than the wagons can haul," Brienne said. "We've barrels of pitch aplenty, gods know, but coal runs thin. We strip the mines beneath Dragonstone, if we must." Ellen flexed half-frozen fingers. "There's more black rock under that island than 10 keeps could burn in 5 winters. The caretakers will load it. They know what stands at stake." Brienne blew a plume of steam. "It means another fortnight before the next shipment of obsidian can reach, if we retask the barges." "Do it. Steel without fire is a blunt prayer." She rested both hands upon the low wall, feeling stone leach heat from her gloves. Any word from Arya? None. But if she crossed the shivering sea, ravens would be useless. A flicker of admiration warmed the knight's eyes. "Shall return when the spider's cloak has done its work." Spider's cloak, that was the code name for the web Arya Stark, now spun through Bravos and the free cities, buying knowledge with whispers, bartering with faceless favors, and if rumor could be trusted, snipping certain mercenary captains from Thornfield's old network, so neatly, their own men never knew they were gone. The plan required 6 weeks. They could scarcely spare 2. Brienne cleared her throat. "There is something else." Scouts from Deepwood report sails off Skagos. Ironborn, black sails trimmed red. They hunt lone merchantmen and vanish into mist. Asha's promise was for peace. Ellen's jaw tightened. She'd not risk alliance over raiding. Likely splinter captains, smelling profit. Brienne frowned. "Still, chaos breeds vultures. Have Davos take a swift cog north from White Harbor. He speaks their cant. He'll parley or threaten as needed." Her breath smoked the air. "If words fail, remind them one dragon can boil the sea across 10 leagues." Brienne's answering smile was feral. "As you say, Your Grace." Then she turned, cloak fluttering, descending into shadows. Ellen remained. Far off, the sky bruised toward sunrise. When she closed her eyes, she still felt yesterday's battle. Crackle of frozen sinew under her boot, whump of wildfire jars, the shriek when Erisys cleaved the crowned lieutenant. She had slept an hour since, yet pulse still thrummed with restless purpose. Victory tasted less like triumph than respite. Because she had seen, in that flaring instant when the ice commander died, the brief echo of a greater shape behind him. A vast, indistinct presence, mind cold and old as petrified starlight, regarding the field through its pawn's eyes. The lieutenant shattered. The presence had receded. But it was not gone. A crackle of wings broke her thoughts. Drogon launched from the tower with the slabstone's thunder, air gusting across the barbican. He banked once over ramparts, and then arrowed northwest toward the dim violet arch of dawn. Smoke drifted from the tear in his left wing membrane. But even wounded, he climbed with fearsome grace. She watched until his shadow blurred into distance. "Hunt well, my heart." Footsteps approached again, lighter this time. Jon Snow emerged. Cloak of heavy wolf fur snapped at one shoulder. Black curls iced silver at the tips. Lines of fatigue bracketed his mouth. He joined her at the parapet. "Ghost east," he said by way of greeting, nodding to the dark pines. "Hay sensed nothing human for 10 miles. We may sleep tonight, if the Ice Lords let us." She attempted a smile, found it brittle. Jon traced a gloved finger along a frost-whirled merlin. "Sansa wants you in strategy tent. Dorne's outriders came in. They brought something your council should see." "What?" He hesitated. "Dragons." Her breath caught. "Hatchlings?" "No." He turned serious eyes on her. "Banners." Dornish spies claimed 3 black sails slipped out of Volantis towing iron barges. Each barge bore a cage. Inside, he drew a breath steamy and white. Desiccated dragons. Bones, but massive. Skins salted and stretched. Rhaenys say the Volantines salvaged them after the doom. Preserved for some dark rite. Now they sail north, bound, rumor says, for Hardhome's ruins. Ellen's heartbeat stumbled. They mean to raise white dragons. Or worse, bind their ghosts to ice. Jon placed a steady hand on her forearm. We hold the wall, but if they loose such creatures, Drogon alone cannot match them. Ellen's mind raced. Necromancy grafting ice magic onto ancient bones, infusing them with captured dragonfire like the shards Colwyn studied. It explained the lieutenant's resilience. The enemy experimented, forged hybrid horrors. If they succeeded... She inhaled sharply. We cannot wait for counsel. We intercept those barges. Jon nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. Sansa will keep the wall. Brienne wants to ride with you, but she's needed here. You will stay also, she said. The North trusts your banner. His expression tightened, but he inclined his head. Then who flies with you? Few. She flexed fingers that still ached from the sword's resonance. Maester Colwyn for counsel. Maybe the caretakers from Dragonstone. They know old bones. And? Ghost. Jon chuckled. First mirth in days. He won't fit on Drogon's back. He can run the coast, hunt our flank. She sobered. We leave before moonrise. Below, horn sounded shift change. She let the sound wash over her, then turned from the wind-scoured parapet and strode down the stairs to meet Sansa. Mark down. Wand. Night cloaked, last hearth in star-pocked indigo, by the time provisions were secured. Colwyn packed 2 satchels heavy with vials of wildfire essence, and a dozen obsidian phials, etched with runes he insisted would bind stray magic long enough to study. The Dragonstone caretakers arrived by Raven's command. Lord Nerys Pyrell, his hair the hue of tarnished moonlight, and his niece Jaina, younger, bright-eyed, bearing a scroll case of maps charting every Valyrian wreck rumored along the coast. They bowed stiffly to Ellen. Drogon's presence had unsettled them, yet their brains burned with lore of Wyrms. Ghost tatted beside Jon while they inspected Drogon's wing. The tear had scabbed black, membrane scorching sealed by dragonfire cough. Nerys suggested a salve of obsidian powder and sheep fat. Jaina applied it, nimble atop a ladder, murmuring lullabies in high Valyrian. Drogon tolerated her touch, though embers seeped from his jaws in low grumble. When all was ready, Ellen donned her black steel cuirass, the phoenix wolf circlet tied behind her braid to avoid wind loss. Irises she slung across her back. The sword hummed faint but eager. At the main gate, Sansa embraced her. Fly swift. End it before it grows. I will. Ellen searched those cool blue eyes. Keep hope breathing here. Sansa's answering smile was razor and rose. Wolves are stubborn breathers. Brienne clasped Ellen's forearm. Every hammer hears the anvil, my queen. Strike true. So beneath a blood-red moon cresting the mountains, Drogon took flight once more, bearing Ellen, Colwyn, Nerys, and Jaina across the black hush of the Wolfswood. Ghost loped below like pale smoke. Dawn would find them far across the Bay of Seals, arrowing toward the cold mouth of the Lorath Straits, where Volantine fleets seldom ventured, but where whispers claimed unnatural fogs now clung like spiderwebs. Mark down. Ahaninde. Awari. Awaton. 3 nights later they spied the convoy. Moonlight turned the sea to hammered tin. From the cloak of cloud Drogon descended silent as snowfall, wings beating slow to muffle thunder. Below, 3 galleys cut northward, triangular red and black sails slack in meager wind, each towing a low freeboard barge. On each barge, rusted iron cage, chains the width of a man's thigh. Inside, a skeletal serpent, skull like a cathedral's ribcage, ribs shackled by runic ice iron. Even from the sky, Ellen felt chill emanating. She guided Drogon higher, heart thudding. Colwyn the phials. The maester uncorked 1 obsidian flask. Its liquid glowed faint emerald, wildfire tempered by glyphs. Break upon the caged core, he murmured. Fire will surge inward, ignite marrow remains, purge sorcery. But be swift, the blast will rage. Nerys studied the pattern of runes burned onto dragonbone. Some are Valyrian but altered, inverted for ice binding. His voice trembled. If the ice priests awaken them, they'll birth storms hotter than fire yet colder than death. Ellen nodded once. Will we strike? Drogon folded wings and plunged. First pass. Claws shredded the aft mast of the lead galley. Sailcloth whirled away like torn parchment. Sailors screamed below. Ellen hurled one file. It shattered against the cage's central rib. Green flame whooshed inward, sucked like breath. Bone glowed from within, then erupted. A silent starburst. The barge vanished in column of jade fury. Seawater flashed to steam. Shock wave bucked Drogon, but he clawed sky. Second galley loosed heavy scorpion bolts. One grazed Drogon's chest scale, sparking. Another whizzed past Ellen's ear. She veered, dropping between ship and barge. Nara's unleashed crossbow bolts tipped in dragonglass at the helmsman. Two slumped. Drogon's roar drowned the crash of waves as he bathed deck in crimson. Wood exploded, tar boiled. Men flung themselves overboard into freezing dark. Ellen spotted robed figures on the barge, palms raised, forming lattice of blue crystals mid-air. She dove, irises flashed. She severed a crystal lattice. Backlash cracked the ice priest's arms. Jaina hurled a second file, direct hit. Emerald fury devoured robes, scales cage alike. A gout of ghostly fire spiraled skyward, illuminating sea for leagues. The third galley tried to cut towlines, abandoning barge to distraction. But Drogon banked, tail sweeping, smashing mainmast. Ellen leapt onto barge deck, boots slipping on frost. Two priests swung sickles of frozen light. She parried, sword singing. Irises met ice steel. Sparks red and blue. Cold bit her wrist through gauntlet, but she pressed, slicing one priest's mask in half. Blue fire leaked. Colwyn, on Drogon's neck, flung last file. Ellen caught it mid-air, slammed into barge floorboards. Crack. Wildfire flood. She vaulted. Drogon snatched her mid-jump, wings thrumming to outrun blast. Three pillars of green fire roared against night, hissing rain as seawater fell back. Charred ribs sank in whirlpools. Only flotsam of burning timbers remained. Volantini survivors clung to debris. Screams swallowed by surf. Ice priests? None. Above, cloudbank reflected lurid flame like false dawn. Ellen stroked Drogon's neck. Heart hammering. The threat ended. Or this threat at least. But as Drogon circled, Colwyn shouted, "Look!" From the vortex of the third pyre rose an orb of ice-blue light, the size of a wagon wheel. It hovered, pulsing, then darted north faster than arrow, trailing crackling frost. Drogon gave chase, but even his speed lagged. Within minutes, the orb disappeared into midnight veil beyond horizon. Jaina's face blanched. A messenger. Or a soul. Ellen! Colwyn clutched saddle rim. It carries the dragon wraith spirit, perhaps, to rebind elsewhere. Ellen's breath steamed. The war had not ended. It merely shifted fronts. Where does it fly? Nares whispered. Ellen stared north, toward the graves, the haunted white tide, the caldera of hard-home black as a wound. She closed gloved fist around Iris's hilt. To its master. And we must follow. Drogon roared, beating higher. But fatigue weighted his wounded wing. He could not pursue light speed tonight. We return to Last Hearth, she decided. Warn them. Forge new plan. Then we find this master and end the winter at its root. Menustiwan said. Colwyn bowed head. So be it. Drogon wheeled south, leaving scattered embers on black water. Behind them, the shivering sea swallowed the last flames of the barges, leaving darkness unbroken save a soul-red star. The ruby on Eris's pommel, pulsing against Ellen's spine like a second heart. Marked down. Nahar. They reached Last Hearth by dawn of the second day. Drogon limping but unbowed. Sansa awaited atop the inner battlements, snow swirling about her scarlet cloak. Jon at her side, Brienne just behind. As Drogon folded down, horns sounded, torches flickered. Thousands looked up with mingled relief and dread. They had seen the green pillars across the northern sky 2 nights before. Ghostly auroras of wildfire. Inside the council hall, Ellen recounted the raid. Colwyn produced sketches of the cages, the runes. Silence followed. Finally, Sansa spoke. You destroyed the bones, yet the spirit escaped. Aye. Ellen's voice low. And I fear it leads us to the wellspring of this new magic. Beyond the wall, perhaps deeper than the Night King's lair. Jon placed a hand on the map, spread across oaken table. Hard home. He tapped the desolate tip of the continent. Wildlings say the sea there froze black even in summer. Cries echo from the cliffs on moonless nights. If something ancient woke among the ruins, it would explain the power. Brienne crossed arms. Then we marched beyond the wall with every banner we raised. No. Ellen shook her head. Armies across pack ice are fodder. We need stealth, speed, and the one weapon the enemy fears. Living flame bound to will. Then, Jon met her eyes. Drogon can carry few. 3 at most. Myself. And those who must go. She looked to the caretakers. Naharis, Jaina. Your lore may decipher spells at the source. They bowed assent. Then her gaze found Arya, who had slipped into hall unseen, travel-stained, eyes glittering. She must have ridden through the night after some new mission. Arya only shrugged. Try leaving me behind. Brienne stiffened. I should guard you. You guard the realm. Ellen said gently. If we fall, unity needs your sword. Brienne's jaw clenched. She dipped her head. Acceptance forged of pain and duty. Jon exhaled. I won't order you to let me fly, but you will stay, Sansa said. The Lady of Winter tapped folded parchments. The crown's weight sits lighter on our sister than on you, brother. But she still needs her wolf. Hold the north, Jon. A hush. He bowed. Ellen laid palm on map's frayed corner. We depart at twilight. Before we return, if we return, prepare every hearth. Should we fail, this hall becomes last bulwark. She looked at each face. Davos, Brienne, Jon, Sansa, Maester Colwyn, Lady Willa, Manderley. Hold together. They nodded, hearts heavy. Mark down. Twilight draped last hearth in bruise blue when Drogon launched once more, talons kicking snow from parapets. Ghost bounded alongside until walls shrank, then veered east to run forest trails. Northward they flew, over pine ridges and frozen rivers, twisting like silver eels. The wall's white immensity rose, torch braziers flickering orange along its crown. Watchmen cheered as shadow roared overhead. Ellen guided Drogon into the breach at Eastwatch, where the sea wind howled through half-collapsed ice. Below, ships moored in ice-sheathed harbor raised sails of wolf and dragon. Those vessels would supply staging camps if the hunt for the Winterheart dragged on. But Ellen prayed for swift end. Past the wall, the land lay still, soundless. Frost trees gleamed like glass, their branches bearing not leaves but thin plates of rime that chimed softly in breeze. Moon shadows stretched black across snowfields. In valleys, wolf prints and mammoth tracks traced lonely stories. No whites roamed, yet. Naris pointed to horizon where a soft nimbus of blue flickered, faint as candle behind cloth. The Shard's beacon, he whispered. Toward it Drogon flew. Hours passed. Cold deepened until breath crusted fur. Jaina wrapped arms around Drogon's ridge to keep warmth. Below, cliffs carved by glaciers plunged into black sea. Hardhome's ruins jutted from edge of world. Shattered piers, burned longhouses, stone idols half buried in frost. And there, atop a caldera of fused obsidian, the beacon pulsed like a wounded star. Drogon landed on fractured plateau. Ellen dismounted, heiresses in hand, its ruby throbbing. Frost glazed her pauldrons instantly. She stepped forward, boots crunching brittle snow. At crater's center a spiral of ice crystal columns ascended, forming crude throne. Upon it sat a figure. No white, no other known. Tall as a giant, draped in ragged cloak of night feathers. Its flesh was translucent ice, through which rivers of pale blue light coursed. And in its chest burned the orb, the dragon wraith's stolen soul, swirling like storm cloud. It spoke without moving lips, voice resonating in skulls. Fire hath no dominion. All ends in stillness. You unbind my harbingers, I will birth new storms. Ellen raised Eris's flame danced. Name yourself. I am the Quiet King. Last shade of the 13th watch. The one your tales forget. Frost gusted outward, coating Drogon's feet in shackles of ice. The dragon roared, straining. Arya slipped into shadows, circling. Nares and Jaina began murmured incantations, their breath misting rune patterns. Colin uncorked a final flask, wildfire concentrate richer than gold. Quiet King lifted palm. Spears of ice jutted from ground, lancing at Ellen. She parried one, two, third grazed thigh, freezing chainmail to skin. She forced numb leg forward, closing distance. Each step cracked ice, each breath burned lungs. Yield your flame, the voice hissed. Serve eternity. Eternity of silence is not life. She swung Eris's blade-carved crescent of molten light, sundering two pillars. They collapsed, shattering. The Quiet King rose, towering. Its cloak unfurled. Inside writhed shapes, half-formed dragon shades, talons of frost. Drogon fought bindings, exhaled scourge of white-hot flame. It struck the invisible aura around throne, splashed harmlessly, yet melted shackles. He lunged again. Arya darted behind the Quiet King, Valyrian knife poised. But frost cloak lashed, hurling her aside. She rolled, blood dotting snow. Jaina shouted, completing right. Nares hurled obsidian rod at base of throne. Runes burst, forming cage of red lines. The Quiet King laughed, sound crackling like glaciers. Colwyn's eyes met Ellen's. She nodded. He flung the flask high. Time slowed. Emerald liquid arced, catching throne light. Ellen leapt, slicing flask midair. Shards scattered, wildfire water falling upon orb in chest. Explosion of green-white engulfed king, throne. Shards. Pain ripped through stones. Plateau groaned. Frost columns vaporized. Ellen felt herself flung backward, tumbling across fractured ground. She struck snowdrift, vision swimming. When smoke cleared, a crater yawned where throne stood. Within glowed magma, red veins throbbing. No sign of Quiet King, no body, no shard. Only a whisper of sigh on wind, like relieved spirit. Drogon limped to Alyn, nuzzled. Arya emerged, clutching cracked rib but grinning savage. Nares sprawled coughing. Jaina stooped over him. Colwyn knelt at crater edge, spectacles shattered, but eyes alight. Ellen, he rasped. The shard is gone. Consumed. I think we severed their fusion magic. She pulled herself upright, leaning on sword. Felt warmth bloom where frostbite threatened. She listened. No pulse of sorcery, only mundane wind. Yet doubt nibbled. The Quiet King gone. But dead. A distant rumble answered. Mountains shook as avalanches cascaded. Far off, pillars of frost crumbled. The unnatural blue halo in sky flickered, dimmed, snuffed. Arya exhaled. Feels like a yes to me. But victories always cost. Nares' breathing rattled. Jaina's hands pressed blood-slick cloth at his side. Ice shard had pierced him during blast. Ellen knelt. The caretaker's gaze met hers. Serene. Worth? The bones, he whispered, then faded. Jaina sobbed quietly. Ellen closed his eyes, vowed Dragonstone would remember. Above, clouds rifted open. Dawn painted Hardhome ruins rose gold. First sunlight the cliffs had seen unmarred by shadows in an age. Drogon spread wings, catching warmth. Ellen rose, wiping tears freezing on lashes. We go home. Markdown. Warrior Mizash. Weeks later, amid banners fluttering from White Tower to Storm's End, a great moot gathered in King's Landing's new council hall, built upon the empty days where Iron Throne once stood. Lords south and north, free folk chieftains, maesters, merchants, even distant envoys from Korth and Ytitai. They came to witness oath of unified realms. Ellen sat not above them but among, on a dais, no higher than any lord's bench. The phoenix wolf circlet gleamed subdued bronze under lanterns. At her flank, Sansa Stark, Lady of Winter and First Hand. Jon Snow in plain leather among free folk, envoys of peace. Brienne, sworn as Shield of the Dawn, clad in new white enameled steel. Arya nowhere visible yet everywhere felt. Colwyn, arm in sling, addressed assembly. The quiet winter is ended, but memory warns, ice returns, fire dims, unless vigilance stands eternal. By decree of this council, let every castle tithe obsidian, let every citadel teach rune smithing, and let the past seat of terror, here, remain bare, so rulers recall humility. Natern? Cheers rolled. Then Brienne stepped forward, sword unsheathed. She reversed grip, knelt, offered hilt to Ellen. Queen of dawn-forged realms, guide us. Ellen accepted blade, more symbol than weapon. She spoke. I am not dragon alone, nor wolf, nor flame of old empire. I am steward of the living's shared breath. We will govern by counsel, fight by shield wall, dream by hearthfire. Let this be our vow. No child will kneel to fear, while one heart still beats to stand. Namnazimenti. Voices thundered assent. Yet she knew work ahead. Rebuild roads, soothe bruised pride in reach. Quell piracy off Skagos, oversee hatching of 3 young dragons under Gina's care. And somewhere, far beyond Summer Sea, whispers of Corthian shadowbinders stirred. Peace is but the pause between heartbeats of history. Still, as horns pealed and doves wheeled beneath a sun unmarred by ash, Ellen allowed herself a breath. Not of relief, but of promise. Drogon roared from the old dragon pit dome. 3 hatchlings chirping at his talons, omen of new cycle. Fire tempered by lesson of ice. And across the realm, from Blackwater Rush to Frosted Peaks, people raised heads to clearer sky. And, in taverns, in holdfasts, in fields ripe for planting, stories spread of the queen who came not to conquer, but to weave. Of a dragon who chose again. Of a world rebuilt on courage shared. When night fell, and torches lit the streets of a capital no longer crowned by blades, Ellen slipped from feast hall to outer terrace. Stars glittered. Footsteps approached. Light, certain. Arya, you still carry that list? Ellen asked. Arya smirked. Shorter now. Might add a few pirate captains. Tell me when it's empty. Arya's shadow merged with darkness. By then you'll rule an age free of fear. Ellen laughed softly. Fear's wily. Then we remain wilier. Arya vanished. Ellen turned to sky. Drogon wheeled above the bay, wings catching starlight. Hatchlings flitting behind like sparks from forge. She pressed palm to Eris's pommel. Ruby glowed in echo. She felt tides of history shift beneath her feet. The board reset. Not the end. Merely dawn. She smiled, breathed sea salt air, and stepped back into hall to shape the future. Ka. Snow melt streamed off the ramparts of the Red Keep in thin silver threads, tracing the mortar seams like new veins, as spring pressed hesitant fingers against the winter-scoured capital. In the courtyard below, white crocuses forced their way up through weather-blackened cobbles, dotting the flagstones like fallens. Somewhere, a mason cursed at the roots that loosened his pristine groutwork, but the small folk passing with baskets of early greens laughed and told him to let the flowers be. King's Landing had known too much ash and too little color, they said, and the ground itself seemed eager to repaint the city in gentler hues. Ellen watched from the balustrade outside the newly built solar, one hand braced on frost-cool stone, the other curled loosely around the pommel of a dagger she rarely used. Below, the marble plaza once haunted by the Iron Throne bustled with life. A quartet of septas shepherded orphan children toward the voice hall for lessons. A team of Dornish stonemasons chiseled bas-reliefs of dragons and deer-wolves into the architrave, and bands of color-splashed acrobats, bravosi by their sleek, oil-black hair, performed cartwheels under fluttering. 3 floors beneath her vantage, Sansa Stark oversaw the procession of guild representatives into the new council chamber, each master artisan sworn to rebuild a district of the city in exchange for trade privileges that would bind Vicum, Volantis, and Westeros together in ways even war could not quickly sever. Sansa's quill flicked along parchment as swiftly as a raptor's wing. That, Elendil had come to realize, was where the true battle lay now. Not on blasted fields of frost or fire, but on ledgers and shipping manifests. She did not envy her hand, though neither would Sansa envy the burden that stirred on slow-beating wings overhead. Drogon arced along the perimeter of the city's airspace, more disciplined than the sky-drunk hatchlings cavorting around him, yet still unable to resist throwing an occasional barrel roll that sent apprentices diving for cover behind chimneys. Every time his silhouette crossed the sun, shadow cascaded through streets in a hush of awe. For months that hush had reminded the small folk of wildfire and dragonfire and tyranny. But familiarity slowly gnawed the terror into something closer to reverence. The city's minstrels even called him the Dawnwing now, a creature of omen who had burned away the winter of despair. Only the old scar over his left wing, healed by soot, thick and ridged, confessed how near they had come to losing him in the last war. Ellen stepped back, interior voices tugging her from the balustrade. The low rumble of debate from the council floor, the thud of crates delivered to the archive vaults, and the flutter of parchment in the map gallery where Maester Colwyn had taken up residence. She turned into the corridor, leather boots whispering on new rushes. Above her, stained glass skylights, salvaged shards from the destroyed sept, gleamed in a mosaic that depicted not a single ruler on a throne, but a ring of clasped hands. At the base of the stair, she nearly collided with Davos Seaworth, who staggered under the weight of 2 wicker hampers filled with smoked cod, a gift from the Sisterman Guilds. He flashed his sea dog grin, but the creases around his eyes lingered. Every raven from the narrow coasts carried new tales of Skagosi raiders, emboldened by the silence of the shattered Night's Watch, and Davos spent his nights drafting patrol routes with Asha Greyjoy, so broad that each morning he woke convinced they were still too thin. "Your Grace," he greeted. "Dockmasters swear the harbor stinks less of bilge and more of pine tar these days. Progress, I suppose." "If pine tar is progress," she replied, helping him settle the baskets onto a carved bench, "then I will count it a miracle when the city smells of lilac." "They planted them around the old dragon pit," Davos said, straightening his spine with a wince. "Give it time." They parted when a herald approached, breathless. A scroll from Old Town, sealed in copper-green wax, scored with sigils of the conclave. Ellen took the missive and tore the seal. As her eyes skimmed the contents, blood rushed in her ears, equal parts alarm and grim satisfaction. "The Maesters confirm," she told Davos. Their seers spotted the aurora fading across the far north. No sign of new ice beacons. "Then it's true," Davos murmured, hope brightening his voice. "The Quiet King truly is gone." "Perhaps." Ellen folded the parchment. "But ice is not the only darkness that haunts the world." "Have the Corthian delegates arrived?" Davos' expression sobered. "Docked at mid-tide. Quarth claims they come to negotiate charter rights for spice caravans. Rumor says they're shadowbinders under silk masks." "Nadan?" "Then rumor is half the truth," she said. "Escort them to the council, but keep them from the hatchlings." "Aye." Davos moved off like a shipwright assessing new storms. Ellen proceeded to the map gallery. The vaulted room smelled of vellum and cedar. Maester Colwyn, bandaged hand resting on a lectern, traced ink lines across a fresh chart, the Western Sea and its jagged islands. Jaina Perel crouched nearby, smoothing a sheet of hammered copper etched with Valyrian glyphs. She no longer wept every dawn for her uncle, but her grief simmered into a fierce academic zeal. "Hardhome is quiet," Colwyn said without preamble, sensing her presence. The last scrying reported no sorcery pulses, but the sea lanes whisper of other oddities. Dead whales ashore at Loreth, blue fires flickering on uninhabited islets. Residual currents of the Quiet King's passing, Jaina offered, brushing hair from her ink-smudged cheek. Or worse, some fragment of his work seeking new host. Ellen traced a calloused fingertip over the coastal runes. "We'll commission the Estalabe, fastest galley left in Bravos, to sweep those shoals." But quietly, she looked up, meeting Jenna's eyes. I will not see another ice dragon rise because sailors boasted of loot before burning it. Jaina nodded, swallowing. They had all felt the blast of that green star, and every night she relived the moment the orb streaked north. Ellen left them to their charts and climbed the spiral to the hatchery loft. There, heat glazed her skin. The 3 young dragons, Obsidian, Firefly, and Scarlet, nested in a bed of hammered bronze and crushed magma stone. 2 maesters in fireproof leathers recorded temperatures and feeding logs, while a summer islander bard strummed gentle chords. The dragons seemed to sleep better to music, though Ellen suspected the player enjoyed the private audience as much as they did. Obsidian, largest, sensed her first. He raised his sleek head, ebony scales shimmering violet under torchlight, and let out a questioning croon. She stepped forward, laying a handle on his jaw. Heat pulsed under her palm. These were not wild war beasts, but partners yet unshaped. She would not allow them to grow into weapons wielded by fear's whim. Soon, she whispered in Valyrian, you'll taste the sky. Scarlet yawned, revealing a throat already glowing with nascent flame sacs. Firefly fluttered half-unfurled wings, translucent membranes shot with gold. Ellen smiled, and for a heartbeat, the weight of crowns and councils lifted. A bell tolled 3 times. Summons to the High Council. She parted from the hatchery and followed torchlit corridors to the council chamber. A circular hall lined by tiered benches. Banners of every great house hung between marble pilasters. Where the Iron Throne had once brooded now, stood a shallow dais of oak ringed by woven rush mats. She took her place in the simple chair at its center. Iron-shod but unadorned. A reminder that rulership sat on shoulders, not swords. Faces ringed her. Sansa at her right, quill poised. Jon opposite in dusky wool. Brienne in pale armor. Davos. Maester Colwyn. The Dornish Prince Kyle Martell. Asha Greyjoy, with rough braided beard beads. Lady Willa Manderley. Even a representative from the free folk. Ragged Nala. Tall and broad-smiled, despite the stiff crush of southern finance. The Corthians stood at the bronze doors. 6 figures swaddled in ivory robes, faces obscured by opalescent veils. Ellen studied them as they stepped forward, every move rehearsed. The tallest unpinned his veil, revealing high cheekbones, skin powdered moon pale, lips painted lapis. His eyes were black mirrors. Great Queen, he intoned, voice as smooth as blown glass. I am Thurbear of the Shadowed Port. We come bearing gifts and treaties from Korth. He gestured, and an attendant unveiled a lacquer chest. Inside lay 6 orbs, dark as void, no larger than quail eggs. Dragon eggs, found in a vault beneath the Garden of Bones. A hush rolled through the hall. Jon's hand drifted to Longclaw's pommel. Brienne's eyes narrowed. Thur's lips curved. These are yours should you grant Korth exclusive rights to harbor 3 outposts along your western shore. Dragonstone, Lannisport, and Oldtown, so that saffron, silk, and wormroot may flow unimpeded. Such bounty benefits all. Ellen rose slowly. Light slid across the Phoenix Wolf circlet. Doughty. She descended the dais, boots silent, until she stood before the chest. The orb seemed to drink the lamplight. A faint chill emanated, contradicting the low heat she felt from living dragon eggs. These eggs, she said, are dead. A flick of surprise crossed Thur's features, quickly masked. You are certain, Majesty? Yes. She rested fingertips near one orb. Cold shot under her fingernail like a splinter of ice. Their song is silence. She straightened, gaze sweeping the Korthian envoys. What you offer is a poison cup. 3 silent stones that promise life but cradle death. Perhaps they once carried dragonfire. No longer. Did you think to trick a rider? The hall murmured. Sansa dipped her quill but did not write, a rare pause. Thur bowed slightly. If they are empty shells, what harm? Consider the trade instead. Ellen's eyes hardened. What harm did your Garden of Bones do when it echoed with the screams of children sold to slavers? You paint misery and call it commerce. She gestured. Brienne stepped forward, gleaming. Thur's entourage shifted, hands slipping beneath robes. cloak edges glinted with black powder glyphs. But before steel flashed, a shadow detached from a pillar. Arya, gray cloak blending with tracery. Her dagger rested at Thur's throat. "No tricks," Arya said softly. "Not here." Thur stilled. Ellen nodded to Brienne. The night relieved the envoys of hidden blades. Slim karambits, vials of resinous smoke. A coil of wire saw. Tools of covert violence. "King's Landing stands open to honest trade," Ellen said, turning so her voice carried. "But sale of chains ends at these gates. And gifts laced with spite we return to sender." She flicked wrist. Asha surged forward, seizing the chest. Two Ironborn hauled it aside. Thur's composure fractured, his black eyes flashing hatred. "You refuse Karth?" "I refuse slavery," Ellen replied. "Leave with your lives." Ragged Nala thumped a spear butt on the floor. Manderly men closed around the iron-stitched chest, ready to toss it into a wagon bound for the sea. Thur drew breath to protest, but Arya's blade tapped his throat. He bowed, lips stiff. "The shadowed port remembers insult, and dawn remembers shadows," Ilyn answered. "Mind you how light dispels them." The Carthians retreated, escorted by Davos and 24 gold cloaks, armed with dragon glass-tipped spears. The great bronze doors clanged shut behind them. Ellen exhaled. Sansa lifted her quill at last. "Minutes will show Karth declined our charter." Brienne held up a recovered blade. A thin sliver inscribed with rune patterns reversed into negatives of Valyrian script. Shadow-binding marks. Colwyn peered, fascinated. Inverted runes, like the cages. Then Hardhome was not a lone experiment, Jon growled. Ellen returned to her seat. "Let them remember insult. Better insult than entrapment. But we must prepare. If Karth sends shadows, we meet them with flame and light." She motioned to Maester Colwyn. He unrolled a parchment depicting a circle of towers linked by causeways, ringed with forged sigils and wyvern icons. "The Lighthouse College," he announced. "A network of watchtowers from Sunspear to Eastwatch, each housing mirror arrays and dragonglass lances. Together they form a shield of warning across the sea's rim." Gasps rippled. Lady Willa smiled broad as a harvest moon. "We'll fund the northern beacons." Prince Kyle Martell tapped the southernmost tower. "And Dorne, the first. The realm, knit by risk and relief, embraced the plan." Spring swelled into early summer. Wheat sprouted in the Tyria fields outside King's Landing. Small folk were paid to plant fruit trees along the city's boulevards, and children carted buckets of mulch with laughter that once would have drawn whips from gold cloaks. Now, the cloaks helped haul. Asha's longships patrolled coastlines, their black sails now striped red and gold to symbolize alliance, and Skagosi raiders melted back into caves when they saw dragons cruise overhead. Drogon's hatchlings learned to ride thermals above the gullet, guardians in training. Each fortnight Ilyn flew with them, tracing the coast so they'd know the shape of the land they protected. The green banks of Mander, the jagged cliffs of Crackclaw Point, the pearl-white spires of the Citadel. Everywhere they went, farmers raised torches and waved. Some kneeling, some throwing simple garlands of dockside flowers. In those moments, Ellen felt the fragile thread linking dragon and dream, tighten and glow. Yet nights brought darker counsel. Raven after raven reported Carthian corsairs, establishing hidden harbors among the stepstones. In the free cities, Volantis bristled at Westeros' closure of slave markets. Whispers told of a coalition of triarchs and red priests, raising tithes to return dragons to chains. And somewhere across the Red Waste, an ancient temple door, once sealed by fire, allegedly cracked open under midnight frost. Ellen convened a smaller war council. Herself, Jon, Arya, Brienne, Davos, Jaina, Colwyn Tyrd. They met in the crypt-lit study beneath the Red Keep, maps crowding candle-lit tables. "We cannot fight every shore," Brienne stated, "nor leave them free to mass." Davos stroked beard stubble. "Hit the nest, not the swarms." He jabbed finger at stepstones. "Pirates gather here. Cull them, the rest scatter." Jon folded arms. "And Volantis?" Arya leaned near a candle's hiss. Remove its spine. A leader who believes in chains. Ellen weighed their words. The hatchlings were not battle-ready. Drogon could not fight across seas nightly. And she had sworn to guide the realm beyond tyranny, not rule by constant war. Diplomacy first, she decided. But not blind diplomacy. Davos. Sail to Volantis with a letter of accord. Offer grain for manumission treaties. Show them prosperity's lure. Nana Nohi. He nodded, eyes glinting maritime excitement. Arya, she continued, shadow their red priests. If their fire prophecies stoke war, cut off the bellows. Arya smiled like moonlight on a dagger. Brienne commands the Stepstone strike. Fast, clean. Jon oversees the northern beacons. Plans unfurled like banners in storm wind. Before they parted, Ellen lingered with Colwyn. The tower network. How long? 2 years full, he said. A year if every realm doubles tithe. Make it a year. She touched the maester's sling. Though months healed the arm, some wounds lingered. The world hums with dark chords. We must answer sooner. He inclined head. The forge is hot. Summer's zenith arrived in a blaze of citron and gold. Bonfires flickered from Gulltown to Duskendale, heralding midsummer feast. In the capital, an enormous loaf shaped like a dragon coiled the length of the plaza. Bakers worked through dawn, dusting it with powdered sugar like frost. Ellen presided over a public court, hearing petitions beneath cloth of gold awnings. A Myrish artisan seeking patent for lens crafting. A free folk delegation negotiating land rights along the new gift. A bard from Old Town presenting an epic ballad of the battle at Hardhome. Dusk poured orange fire across the rooftops, when horn blasts cut through revelry. A silhouette, a small wyvern plunged from the western sky, wings ragged. It crashed upon plaza cobbles, sliding to Ellene's dais in a gout of dust. Jaina sprinted forward, ripping a sealed capsule from its leg. Blood streaked the reptile's pale scales. She knelt, tears bright, as the creature rasped and went still. Ellen seized the scroll. Wax snapped. Words tore across the parchment like a storm. Volantis refuses accord. Triarch Malako declares Dragon Queen, a tyrant no better than Mad King. Red priests preach war of cleansing flame. Fleet of 30 triremes sails north under banner of Black Harpy. Quarth rumored to lend shadow ships unseen by mortal torch. Beware the night, the sea goes silent. Devos signet sealed the bottom. Spattered drops of ink suggested quills crashed as ship rolled. Ellen turned to the crowd, still mid-cheer. Unaware. She closed eyes, drawing steady breath. When she opened them, Drogon's roar split the crimson sky behind her, hatchlings circling in rising dread. The feast ended in heartbeats. Drums of war began anew. 2 days later, Ellen stood upon the seawall at Cape Wrath, spray stinging her cheeks. Far out, triangular sails scythed across a storm-pink horizon, spears of black against gold dusk. The Volantine fleet pushed hard, captained by men who believed a queen unwilling to slaughter innocents was weak. She wore black leathers, no cloak. Wind would only whip fabric into distraction. Brienne's expeditionary fleet crouched behind outcrops, sails furled, to lure enemy closer. On the cliff to her right, Prince Kyle's scorpions waited, bolts tipped with wildfire glass. Jon commanded the lighthouse south of her, mirror prepared to blind the first volley of flaming arrows. Arya? Already aboard one of those triremes, knives gliding across throats of captains who steered by faith in chains. Ellen raised heiresses. Ruby glowed, calling. Drogon answered, spiraling earthward. Hatchlings banked behind him. Smaller, eager yet disciplined under his hiss. The queen mounted. Ocean thundered below. Sails bellied closer, oars churning slate-gray water. War horns bellowed foreign notes of conquest. Ellen breathed flame into her heart. Gentle flame, not rage. She leaned forward and whispered, remember, we defend, not destroy. Drogon's pupils narrowed, understanding. They launched. Wind tore at her braid as they soared above breaker tops. The first trireme loosed a flight of arrows. John's lighthouse mirror pulsed. Sunlight flared blinding white, scattering aim. Drogon jetted along the mast line, spewing a curtain of fire that never touched deck but melted rigging. Sail collapsed, tangled oarsmen. Hatchlings dove next, searing arrow barges into inoffensive torches. While scorpions fired, wildfire bolts shattered hulls into green infernos. Sea hissed where flames met brine. Enemy crews panicked, some leaping, others futilely praying to Red God. Their priests answered with wrath. 2 black gilded ships detached, keels churning unnatural midnight. Shadows writhed along hulls, Corthian craft. Their decks birthed figures of black flame that moved like smears of night. Drogon's fire hissed out on contact. Hatchlings screeched, recoiling. Ellen's heart hammered. She inclined Drogon's left wing, banking. "Brienne!" she shouted into wind. No ear could carry, yet she hoped the plan reached. From the cliffs a crate was launched by trebuchet, carried on chain, shattering mid-air above shadows. Powdered dragonglass dust mixed with fine sand. The particles scattered across the phantoms like gleaming ash. Black fire figures convulsed, sputtered, and collapsed in pools of smoking tar. The Corthian ships curved away, sails slackening, helms unmanned. A roar of triumph rose from Allied fleet positioned behind shoals, revealing itself at last. Ironborn reavers under Asha surged, ramming half-disabled Bolantine hulls, boarding lines singing. Lennisport Dramans unleashed ballistae. Yet amid carnage Ellen kept Drogon's flame measured, targeting masts and weapons, sparing men who dropped arms. She landed upon the quarterdeck of the Black Harpy flagship, Eris's in hand. Triarch Malako, robes fine as spider silk, stood rigid behind phalanx of gilded guard. He lifted a scepter topped with stylized dragon skull. "Ellen Stormborn," he sneered. "Last of false dragon tyrants." She met his gaze. "Dragons do not tyrannize. Men who fear change do." Guard spears leveled. Before a single thrust, Arya materialized from hatch. Blade at Malako's spine. "Drop it." The scepter clattered. Spears hesitated. Ellen lifted Eris's. Warmth flooded deck aura, dousing hatred. She spoke. "You came to chain us. Now you kneel to freedom, or sink with fear." Across the deck, sailors watched hatchlings circle above. Flames glimmering dawn bright. One by one, spears lowered. Malako sank to knees, face gray. Battle waned. Fires hissed out. Surrender flags replaced harpy banners. When last arrow fell, seabirds returned, crying, unaware that continents pivoted on blood and ash. That evening, as wounded were tended aboard mercy barges, and surrendered triremes anchored under watch, Ellen stood amid quiet deck. Sunset, turning waves rose gold. Drogon lay along gunwale, massive head resting near her boots. She stroked scarred scales, exhaustion numbing her bones. Arya joined, feet silent. She offered a water skin. Ellen drank, salt on lips. "A web undone?" she asked. Arya shrugged. "For now." Shadowbinders fled, but others will try. Ellen looked to horizon, stars pricking. "Then, we remain wilier." She echoed Arya's earlier words. A faint smile ghosted Arya's lips. They stared across the shattered fleet, to shore where lighthouses, from Sunspear to Eastwatch, began to blaze, linking coast in chain of fire. A living wall brighter than any blade. Joan's mirror flashed signal from the promontory. 3 rapid glints, the all-clear end of battle. Ellen breathed. Not the last war, but each won by courage, not cruelty. Dagon Danro. Drogon's rumble vibrated deck. Above, hatchlings danced through smoke trails, their silhouettes entwined like cursive against darkening sky. In the years that followed, those hatchlings matured, patrolling the watchtower chain, their presence enough to keep slavers at bay. The Lighthouse College became the realm's greatest beacon of learning, teaching rune-smithing and wildfire tempering beside medicine and shipcraft. Qarth, chastened, signed accords banning human cargo from any port claiming alliance. When Ellen's reign reached its 10th year, Minstrels sang not of battles but of the springing time, an era when wheat reached a man's chest in the riverlands, when the north sold ice wine southward, and when children in King's Landing played dragon rider upon stick horses without knowing fear. They might one day read in dusty tomes of the ice wars, the quiet king, the black harpy, and whisper that such terrors could never return because the dawn was permanent. Ellen knew better. Dawn was a candle whose wick must ever be trimmed, lest it gutter. Yet, as she stood upon the same balustrade where years earlier she'd tasted spring's first crocus breeze, she allowed herself a rare luxury: hope unfettered. Below, crocuses had multiplied into carpets of color: purple, yellow, white. No mason dared uproot. Children chased one another between flower beds. The city smelled not of pine tar but of lilac. Behind her, the council chamber buzzed with talk of a grand library to rise where the old sept once burned, a sanctuary of memory to outlive crowns. Sansa's laugh drifted out the windows. Joan's baritone answered. Somewhere beyond the walls, Brienne sparred with the next generation of knights, boys and girls both, while Davos instructed them that a good captain knows when not to draw sword. Drogon passed overhead, wings titanic but familiar. The hatchlings, now adult, flanked him, forming a V across the sky. Obsidian dark as night, firefly gold speckled, scarlet blazing crimson. They cried in triumphant harmony, and their music resonated through rooftops and rivers, until every heart lifted. Ellen lifted her face to wind, eyes glistening. In the stillness between wingbeats, she felt the realm itself breathe. A great, fragile, relentless breath. She pressed the pommel of Aeris's to her chest, feeling warmth pulse. The candle of dawn would need tending until stars burned out. But for this moment, the light was steady, and she was its keeper. Ika, Jiener. Gray salt mist rolled off the black water like pipe smoke from a dreaming giant, softening the outlines of towers and terracotta roofs until King's Landing seemed half sculpted, half remembered. From the roof garden atop Maegor's Holdfast, Ellen felt droplets bead in her lashes, cold pearls that vanished the moment they touched her skin. Below, dawn bells pealed matins from the new sept of many lights, their bronze tongues chiming a roundelay learned from Braavosi architects who insisted every sacred house should sing to the sky at least once a day. The notes drifted upward, bright, minor, strangely hopeful, until a second, deeper toll answered from the Dragon Pit Dome on Rhaenys Hill. Two voices in warm counterpoint, neither subservient. She exhaled a plume of fog and shifted her gaze from the city to the wide slate sheet of sea beyond. A single shape cut the rolling grayness. The astrolabe, sails furled to winter gusts, returning earlier than expected. The brazen spyglass at her prow, gift from the Archmaesters, glinted in what little light broke the cloud cover. She counted 5 escort cutters angling close behind, pennons snapping. 1 crimson, 2 green, 1 white, 1 purple trimmed gold. Alliances arriving like beads on a thread. Bootsteps scuffed the gravel path, threading purple hellebore and frost-rimmed rosemary. Sansa emerged, her wolf fur mantle dark against pale stone. She carried a sealed scroll tube in one hand and a sprig of early lilac in the other, the blossoms the color of new bruises. Her cheeks had puffed faint roses beneath the chill, but her expression was composed as ever. "The astrolabe made good tide, it seems," she said, slipping the tube into her sleeve. "So it does." Ellen folded arms over her leather jerkin. I wondered if her captain would linger around Loreth to test those new compasses. She cocked her chin to the distant vessel. Apparently not. Lorathi waters have grown fickle. Sansa offered the lilac sprig. Ellen tucked it behind one ear. This arrived well before the ship. She withdrew the tube, cracking its wax. From Korth of all places routed through Pentos by secret path. She extended the parchment. Ellen took it, brows knitting. The script spiraled in slanted glyphs of oily turquoise, each character a serpent devouring its own tail. Jaina had once named it a dialect of Shadow Tongue, nothing a Citadel cipher could easily break. But Ellen felt the meaning coil beneath her fingertips, a whisper rather than plain speech. She shut her eyes, letting the words burrow like earthworms through loam. Finally she opened them. An invitation to parley, if you believe it, she murmured, handing the scroll back. The Gilded Harbor at the Festival of Masks, High Priestess Jai Marine, no relation to Marine of Slaver's Bay, so far as I can tell, seeks restoration of celestial harmonies. Sansa's mouth tightened wryly. Which means? Either genuine repentance or elaborate ambush. She shrugged. With Korth, one seldom sees the hinge until the knife has already turned. Sansa traced one rune with a gloved fingertip. They choose the Festival of Masks, so no one must prove who they are. A place where even truth arrives costumed. Wise, Ellen admitted. Still, she motioned toward the murmuring city. This realm drinks peace now the way parched sand drinks rain. I won't jeopardize it by walking blind into shadow. We'll craft the conditions, Sansa said. Guards in plain garb. Ships poised beyond the horizon. She tucked the scroll away. But first we celebrate the 10th night. Ellen almost smiled. The 10th night, anniversary of the peace forged after the Stepstones battle, now served as a festival of renewal. Lanterns afloat on the rush, bread baked in phoenix shapes. Free seating at the stories on the steps where traveling players recounted the world's turning. Yet Ellen's mind slid as ever to what followed celebration. Work, vigilance, the quiet accounts of rising trouble along far coasts. Footfalls again. This time Jon Snow, stripped of color beyond charcoal cloak and the gray in his beard stubble. He nodded to the lilac behind Ellen's ear. You flowers to match the storm? I prefer my contradictions fragrant, she replied, stepping aside as he joined them at the parapet. Jon braced forearms on the stone coping. Ravens out of deep would report men gone missing along the lonely light shoals. Nets come up with burns that smell of pitch and myrrh. No footprints, no ships sighted. Sansa frowned. Sabotage from the Stepstones' exiles? Elves, Jon said flatly. Ellen quirked a brow, but he continued. So the fisherfolk claim. Wave-tall, blue-skinned, eyes phosphorescent. They carve runes into driftwood and let tides deliver them. Beshen? Fisherfolk see many things after winter ale, Sansa muttered. True. Jon's half-smile vanished. But the runes burned themselves into the pine, and Asha's men swear the boards muttered all night where they lay stacked. Ellen lifted her gaze toward the gray-blue band where sea blended into sky. Something stirs far north of the Isle of Skago still. Not ice, perhaps, but deep waters equal darkness. She inhaled slowly. We might need the river tower nets sooner than planned. Sansa looked to Jon. We accelerate the chain for White Harbor. He nodded once, hands curling into fists, knuckles scarred. And speak with Glover about patrol catches. He still owes a debt. Do so. She leaned back, arching shoulders, forcing tension from muscles. But not today. She pivoted on her heel. Today the jokers of Flea Bottom have built a dragon kite near half a league long. If we don't appear, they'll assume we fear being mocked. She offered her arm to Sansa. Shall we walk? As they descended the cedar-inlaid staircases, Ellen let conversation of politics dissolve into glimpses, servants stringing glass beads along balustrades. Maesters testing mechanical birds that would whirl above the crowd, scattering rose petals. A pair of free folk, toddlers chasing a piglet, dyed green. Guards from Dorne leaning on spears while trading lemon cakes for spiced wyvern jerky with a lysine and void. Every color seemed a promise. At plaza level, the immense dragon kite awaited. Cotton sails dyed midnight with silver stars stitched along the wings, tail festooned with colorful ribbons and bells. Dozens of ropes anchored it, manned by orphan children in patchwork cloaks. The moment Ellen and Sansa appeared, the children cheered as one. Ellen gestured them forward. Fly, she said. On her mark, the ropes released. The sails caught the rising coastal breeze, and the kite surged skyward, bells chiming madly. The crowd erupted. Small folk, merchant princes, rough-handed smiths, highborn ladies come to test new freedoms, sailors, sellswards, an ocean of faces turned upward together. The enormous kite soared, brushing the first glow of morning sun, and for an instant looked alive, silver stars glittering. A hush fell. Children clutched each other, breathless. Then above the kite, like a parent come to inspect a child's art, Drogon dipped his enormous head, wings beating once in silent approval. The little bells rang back. Laughter rippled through the square, dissolving the hush into delighted shouts. Ellen closed her eyes and savored the sound. Maybe this was what victory meant. Not the silence of fallen foes, but the cacophony of lives resuming, noisy, flawed, joyous. She felt a tug. A small girl barely to her knee, curls woven with yarn ribbons, held out a single crocus. Ellen crouched. The child's eyes were hazel flecked with gold, bright as dawn. "For you," she whispered. Ellen accepted, kissed the child's forehead. The girl darted into the crowd. Sansa touched Ellen's shoulder gently. Everything was being seen, every kindness magnified. The chords of the city's twin bells changed then, the morning song giving way to midday chimes, an improvisation written by the city's orphan apprentices. Ellen straightened. Time drifted again toward duty. Jon approached, leading Davos, Brienne, and Jaina through the throng. His face already formed the mask she knew. News had arrived. "Rooks rest ravens," he said softly. The Astrolab's captain carried more than charts. Pirates scouted the Narrows under false Braavosi flags. A dozen, maybe more. Their hulls bear fresh runes. His glance flicked to Jaina. "You'll want to see." Jaina's nostrils flared. Shadow glyphs inverted. Brienne scanned the sky, noting Drogon's flight path. "We'd best push the river tower nets north within the fortnight." "It won't be enough," Ellen murmured. "Not if they plan to anchor their spells in open water." She stepped away from the kite festivities, the others forming a loose circle. Bells still chimed overhead, echoing off stone. Happy sounds now jarred. "We need watchers who know the runes intimately," she said to Jaina. "And we need allies in the deeps. The Selkies of Skagos, perhaps." "Noi. Selkies don't parley," Davos rasped. "They sing. If they deem your song honest, they listen." Ellen considered. "Then, we sing." Even as she spoke, shards of bright laughter reached them from the crowd, overlapping the chiming bells. She turned, saw the city's people dancing under falling rose petals. The mechanical birds had taken flight. For a second, the entire square glittered pink and gold. Though high above, a bank of storm clouds bruised the edge of sky purple. She breathed in petals perfume and salt mist, feeling the pull of two forces, celebration and the next threat. She held them both. That was her life now, the perpetual tension between joy and vigilance. She faced her friends, family, she corrected, and felt words gather behind her tongue, like distant thunder that promised rain but not ruin. "We enjoy midday," she said. "When dusk comes, we plan." They nodded. Jon's mouth softened. Davos' shoulders relaxed a hair. Brienne offered a ghost of a grin. Jaina pushed stray hair behind ear, determination firming. For the next hour, Ellen danced among her people, accepting cups of honey wine, playing tug-of-war with children, listening to a cholera survivor recite a poem head composed during convalescence. She laughed when an acrobat performing a handspring tumbled too far and skidded into a basket of pears. The queen helped him up with her own hands. The crowd roared at the sight. Only after the sun passed its zenith did she excuse herself. She climbed the silent stairs to the highest tower, newly christened the Lantern of the Realm. The gallery windows framed sky on all sides. She stood there alone, watching the dragon kite now nearly indistinguishable from Drogon's hatchlings. Bells lost to distance. In the hush, Eris's weighed warm against her hip. She drew the sword. Its ruby pulsed once, reflecting her face, older now, yet alight. She angled the blade, letting sunlight scatter across the gallery's ceiling in smoldering patterns. A single leaf of lilac fell from behind her ear, landing at her boot. She slid the blossom onto the sword's flat, balancing it there. A violet breath unforged dawn fire. The world, she mused, was just such a balance, steel and fragile scent. She's the blade. Left the lilac pressed between the pages of a blank ledger. Then she descended to meet her council before dusk, crocus perfume still lingering, bells still echoing faint through stone. Outside, A gull cried high and lonely. The sea answered in a susurrus, lost among a multitude of human voices. Twilight set the harbor aflame in molten tangerine as Ellen boarded the Storm Valkyrie, a sleek galley trimmed in black and copper. Lanterns hung from her prow, each glass shutter carved with runes shaped by Gina's steady hand. Filtered light to confuse shadow spells. Sails dyed deep indigo bellied in evening wind. Mock stars stitched across the canvas shimmered like scattered diamonds. The crew bustled, a motley of Northmen, Dornish women, free folk harpooners, one Lycene cartographer whose eyes never left the horizon, and below decks a pair of iron-born engineers tinkering with lever ballistae. At the stern, Davos clasped the tiller, sea wind ruffling his new silver-shot beard. Brienne supervised the boarding of 6 horses for coastal reconnaissance. She wore pale half-plate that flashed pink under skyfire. Jon remained ashore atop his white gelding, bidding them swift tide. Sansa at his side offered Ellen a parchment packet, sun-dried wolf jerky, and candied ginger for night watches. Drogon roared overhead, hatchlings wheeling behind. He would not accompany the ship. Waves unsettled him. Instead he'd patrol the fleet's flanks from sky. A silent sentinel no shadow mage could anchor. Arya appeared last, as twilight bled lavender. She carried no pack, only the thin Valyrian dagger at her belt and a single arrow fletched in dragonglass. One shot, but one true. She nodded to Ellen, expression unreadable, and strode up the gangplank. Lines cast, oars dipped. The Storm Valkyrie slid from the quay, prow slicing painted lantern reflections. Dockworkers and children cheered. Someone played a reed whistle. Lanterns bobbed like fireflies. Ellen stood near the bowsprit, cloak snapping, feeling the keel vibrate with hunger for deep water. The lighthouse chain along the coast winked alive one by one. Blue flame, then green, then gold. Soon they'd burn from horizon to horizon. A path of stars on earth guiding mariners and warding fiends. Somewhere beyond that radiant edge, Corthian shadow ships drifted, their masters dreaming of nets woven from night itself. Ellen tasted salt on her lips, but also the bright spice of ginger between her teeth. Night swallowed the harbor. The lanterns of King's Landing dwindled astern, and ahead the sea's dark face glimmered with the first lights of the chain. Drogon's silhouette crossed the crescent moon, vast and sure, a living vow overhead. Ellen closed her eyes, feeling the ship's rhythm merge with her heartbeat. Forward, into uncertainty, bearing flame and song. The candle of dawn demanded tending. She opened her eyes to the moving dark, steadied herself against the pitching deck, and smiled.